Gather round, freaks. Are you some sort of secret agent trapped in the throes of passion with a woman? Is it Valentine's Day where you are? Well, how about you gather around the internet radio and gather around the internet campfire? Because there's one question that has to be asked each and every week, and that is, hey, did you see this one?
Hello, 007. You're about to embark on a high-stakes mission that could shake the foundations of pulp culture. Your objective: dive into a certain franchise with a sharp, action-packed analysis. Infiltrate the world of espionage and glitz, dissecting the cunning of your foes, the allure of your vehicles, and your iconic gadgets. Prepare to tackle sensitive topics that could spark heated debates. Everything from the ethics of MI6 to the subtext in Goldfinger. This mission captures the essence of danger and allure. Your findings may attract the attention from rival podcasters and covert organizations. Harness your charisma, stay cool under pressure, and create a podcast that leaves the listeners breathless. Good luck, 007, because this month, Hey Did You See This One invites you to the Big Book of British Bonds.
Damn it. Off to a bad start. Hello and welcome to Hey Did You See This One, the weekly roundtable review podcast where we just have to ask this question each and every week. Hey, did you see this one? My name is Jason R. Phillips, joined as always by my co-host Stephen Double O Ding Dong. That's his name legally.
Hey, it's me, Double O Ding Dong over here.
He's slamming food into his gullet because time is a commodity not a lot of us have a lot of. Death is a cruel mistress coming for us all, and
Death is a cool mistress, and I hope she's into me. You think she'll say yes?
I said cruel, but you said cool. This is episode 171. If you're playing at home, season 3, episode 22. Of course, it is the Big Book of British Bonds month, where we have moved one book to the right on the shelf of Hey Did You See This One? Next to the Grimoire Familiar Killers, we have the Big Book of British Bonds. This week we are of course covering The Living Daylights.
And every time you run your hand across the bookshelf with all our creepy books on it and you get to the Big Book of British Bonds and it just falls open.
Yeah, and George Lazenby falls out of it and goes, hey, I was in.
He goes, I've been trapped here since the 70s. Help me.
And then you close it and his soul gets sucked back in. I did want to actually do one shout out I forgot to do last week, which is Humanoid Media. The music at the end of that intro is provided by that creator. I recommend following them. They have amazingly orchestral music that they provide completely for free. And you can use it in any of your YouTube music. And he just so happened to have a really cool James Bond chase sequence ready for me to use. And I really appreciate it. So check it out. Humanoid Media.
I couldn't have come up at a better time, honestly. I know that you were struggling to find something to use for that intro video because it's like not a lot of people make James Bond style music.
Yeah, and it feels James Bond without being like overtly James Bond. You know, it seems like you could slot into a James Bond chase sequence really quite easily.
As long as it
So
goes
again,
long,
good work,
long,
Humanoid Media.
long.
We love you.
We love you. If you've noticed, this whole month, we are, of course, card-carrying members of the United Federation of Podcasts. Okay. Well, I've decided that this month, not only we're going to do James Bond, but I'm going to invite our other card-carrying members of the United Federation of Podcasts on the show to talk about James Bond. There's no real correlation, you know, but it kind of just made sense. It was time. I would
Jason
like
decided
to
all by himself. He didn't ask me at all.
No, it was well, your idea was James Bond, and my idea was United Federation. But I would like to now introduce the father, the grandpappy of the United Federation of
The
Podcasts.
living daylights himself.
Yeah, I'm the Dave Lights. Here I am.
The living Dave Lights. Perfect. Dave Mader. Dave Mader, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Dave Mader.
Why, thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's a long time coming, and
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be part of the projects that you've been doing. We've been a part of the network now for I'd say about 8 months, almost a year. And I've been a part of the Survivor podcast. I've recently joined the Mary Mader
Marvel Society.
Marvel Society.
You gotta
where
get the
we're gonna
M's in the right order, but yes,
It's true. We're going to be covering Brave New World on Monday, and Steve, of course, has been a part of Trivial Debates and the
Champion, excuse me.
Yes, and you've been on our Star Trek Radio Theater on our Live Long and Podcast channel.
I have.
well.
I was also on the X-Men play that we did.
That's
I
right.
played the Blob.
Yeah,
which
I
was
was like,
fun.
who is this amazing voice actor guy? And then we came to know you. Yes,
Everyone that I've talked to is where they're like, wait, what? You sounded like a big giant fat Bob Blob man. I'm like, I know. I did a good job.
I found my calling. It's here. So glad to be here. Yeah, of course, Jason, you've been on our Super Mader Brothers podcast where we mostly do our Survivor and Big Brother podcasts, and that's also the channel we do our Mary Mader Marvel Society, MCU kind of check-ins. I'm also created Trivial Debates with my brother Jeff a long time ago, and Live Long and Podcast I'd say is my passion podcast of all of those. The Star Trek themed one, which we're constantly doing reviews on, and different things like Star Trek Radio Theater and whatever. So,
I would say until Hey Did You See This One came along, Star Trek was the Live Long and Podcast was the jewel in the crown, so I'm sorry to usurp you in your own network. No, I'm
it's
fully
okay.
kidding.
Yeah. Obviously this is your guys' show, and I'm very passionate about being here right now. So,
I can tell you're
Cool.
charged up. I'm excited to have you here.
Have you guys ever done the Star Trek movies?
as like radio plays or just the reviews?
The reviews. I know you've done the movies. But,
Yeah, we
like
did
the
those.
plays,
That was
but-
like the beginning of COVID, really. It was like
Okay.
because we came off the Picard podcasts, and we were kind of like, well, this is kind of fun. That was like us starting to get used to even being on video and doing a podcast, because originally it's just an audio podcast. And then as that was progressing, we did all the movies, and then we're like, let's do original series. Let's do Deep Space Nine, and then we started doing the radio plays and all those.
And now we all suffer from chronically online mental illnesses.
It won't go
Yes.
away.
We were thinking about doing Star Trek at some point, and I think it would be a good idea to repeat this sort of formula.
Oh,
Just
for
have
sure.
The UFP on.
We're only going to cover 4 people. Jamil was actually on last month, and he was like, "You guys are doing James Bond," and I'm like, "Look, there's like 12 people that are."
Yeah.
easy
So
to
instead, we
pick
invited
from.
him on for the least known John
the
Carpenter
worst
movie of
John
all,
Carpenter movie.
Which one's that?
Memoirs of
Memoirs
an
of a-
Invisible Man.
Yeah, it was a good
Oh.
episode about a terrible movie.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dave, for joining us tonight. Of course, the format of the show is we go for a little bit longer than you might be used to, so hang in there. We're gonna get through it. Speaking of getting through it, worst segue of all time, I would say. I think that we need to have a quick synopsis of the film, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Zardos is here with us. Zardos,
Zardos, you here?
Zardos speaks to you.
He's here.
He demands you synopsize this film. Tell him how, why, who, what occurs in this film.
Wow.
Wow. I think I usually fall on my face for these synopses. So, Steve, are you comfortable with giving us a synopsis this week? I promise next
It's
week
hard because there's so
I'll
much
write something down.
There's
Yeah.
so much that happens, but basically the skeleton is that secret agents, 00 agents, are being murdered by a mysterious faction, which the people who die are left with a message. It's a Russian saying that that translates, I think, to like "die all agents" or something like that.
All spies must die.
Die spies. It says spies die spies. It's like
These spies, the
phenomenon or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. I don't speak Russian.
No, I had to turn on the subtitles at one point in this movie just to like what are they saying? Like
Yeah, and they're even doing like the cartoonish Russian too. It's not even like super like intense realistic Russian. It's like, no, this lady's gonna come in and be like, "You talk to my poopies now." Look inside my poopies.
hey, what are you doing over here?
But yeah, so James Bond is this is sort of the cold open, I guess, before the credits sequence, the classic James Bond music video credit sequence. But James Bond is sent into Soviet-controlled territory to pull somebody out who is what's the word? Not converting. Defecting. There we go. Who's defecting, but on this mission, a mysterious cello player is going to murder this man. And instead of killing her, he decides that she's too hot to die or whatever. And
That's kind of how I took it.
instead,
she doesn't know how to work that gun.
Yeah, she doesn't know the ass end of that rifle from the front end of the rifle. So instead, he scares the living daylights out of her by shooting the gun instead of her. Chaos ensues at MI6 trying to figure out what's going on. And then the person that defected, I think his name's Koskov, he then is captured by a super Nazi looking like Aryan assassin who dresses like a milkman. It's very cool. We'll talk about that more in depth later. But it basically flips again and he gets captured again. But then it's revealed to us that he's actually working for the bad guys. And James Bond is then trying to figure out who has been murdering the agents, and it's sort of this convoluted story where the main story is already solved for us, and now we're just on a journey with James Bond trying to put the pieces together that we've already figured out. And then in the end, he escapes to Afghanistan and then goes into a Russian airbase and blows a bunch of heroin up. and the bad guys get arrested, and John Rhys Davies is there, and he's like, "I'm Russian this time."
I'm Russian.
Yeah,
It's interesting to note too that we jumped from Bond 1 to Bond 15.
yeah. I mean, that was your decision, Jason.
Well, we had to move things around a little bit. It was going to be a little bit. I think we were supposed to do a Roger Moore this week, which would have been.
It doesn't matter what order we do
Anyway,
it.
it doesn't matter. At any rate, this is where we are, and this is where we're
This
at.
one is a little
and,
bit harder to give a simple boiled down synopsis to because
Right.
there's so much going on and there's so many characters. There's even like 3 fucking villains, it's not just one.
Yeah.
Like, here's the bad guy. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of it. As we go through the plot, we can kind of focus in on those details a little bit more closely, and there's a lot to it, but at the same time, it's fairly simple. It's not hard to follow. It's just kind of like hard to be like, so this is what it's about in 2 sentences. Not happening.
Question for you guys: are all like okay? So disclosure on myself, I've never watched a James Bond movie this old before. This is
really?
the old. I'm like a Pierce Brosnan and after kind of a James Bond.
Yeah, no, that's fair because until, I was in my like late teens and early 20s, I was the same way. Like, I'd only watched the ones that had come out when I was alive.
And I was alive for this, technically.
Right. I was barely alive for this.
That was true.
But Yeah, so I have watched all of them, but in terms of sticking power and the ones that I really remember the most, it is Brosnan and beyond, where like I can tell you what happened in all the Brosnan movies and all the Craig movies without having to be like, I need a refresher. Whereas these ones, they all sort of blend together in my brain.
Hey, my
What's your
question is like, are they all like, this one felt long to me compared to like, I guess the Brosnan and Craig era, which is maybe a faster paced kind of a movie, but like this one felt like, yeah, we're meandering. We start off on this opening sequence where they introduce us to this new James Bond, and then we go to Prague, and then we go back to England, and then we go back to Prague, and then we go to Afghanistan, I think, and
Yeah.
then we go to Russia at the end or something. Vienna is in there. You know, I don't know. It just felt like it was kind of like we're traveling by map a lot, and we're kind of moving around. And
Yeah,
Steve might be able to answer this a little bit better. From my point of view, last week's movie was about 30 minutes shorter for the first one. I was shocked that this movie was 2 hours and 10 minutes, but I've always understood these movies to be kind of like following James Bond around the world. But Steve, you can probably answer it a little bit.
No, I mean, you're right. Like that is it. But I think that Dave is right. It's the reason this one feels so long is that you are spending an ungodly amount of time with just James Bond for most of it, right? Like, and it's him. It's always annoying when the main character has far less information than the audience, to me at least. So if I already know all of this information before James Bond does, it's less interesting and it feels longer because you're like, come on, Bond, put it together. They already told us. And so to have these reveals happen so early and not have him realize it until so later on, it damages the viewing experience to me. But even just like stuff that's like so boring, like him at the fair with the woman like winning prizes and shit, I'm like, this is boring. This has been done in everything, and it's been done so much better in so many different things. For a James Bond movie to do it and have it be boring is insane. Like how did this happen?
Yeah,
it did have a cool death though. I mean,
it has its moments, and it has some great one-liners. Like I gave him the boot, and you know, etc. But and the other thing, I'm always still, I guess, you know, there's probably an answer to this, but like, is every James Bond actor like a different multiverse version of James Bond, or are they connected?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard that perspective, but I see no reason why the answer shouldn't be yes.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it a little bit last week. There is that fan theory that the James Bond is 007 is a moniker taken up by a new person every time it's shown to be a new, but it doesn't explain why sometimes characters carry over, and also
actors.
Like is also the his American friend another moniker? Yeah, Felix Leiter, is he a moniker for the American?
Yeah, this is government? This is a thing that has been like pulled apart for decades, right? Like people have been talking about this forever. This is not any kind of fresh take in terms of discussing it, but like some people say yes, some people say no. The movie makers are always like, no, it's the same guy, and it's like, no, it isn't.
We've been dealing with the multiverse in Marvel now for it's only been 4 years, but it feels like a decade.
It feels like a long time.
And I
almost feel like
that perspective is better than the moniker thing.
I think what it is mostly is the writers are just like, we just want to use the characters and we don't have to give a fuck about anything that happened in these other movies unless they are directly related. So like Craig's world is all Craig's world and Brosnan's world is all Brosnan's world. And the same goes for all of them, because in certain Craig movies, the actual story goes through, right? Like there is a beginning and an end that runs through all the movies. Same with the Brosnan movies, a little bit less so, but characters do come in here and there. But as soon as you get to like Judi Dench crossing over from one series to another series, that's where it gets muddy, where you're like, who fucking knows? There's no answer, right?
And
There's
Q,
no satisfying
right?
answer.
Like until
Q
got Q was like the same guy through all of these movies. In this movie they referenced 008, who is to me is like the character from GoldenEye, the guy who played by Sean Bean.
That's 006.
Sorry,
sorry, I don't mean to check you right at the door.
You're right. You're correct. You're correct.
I did the same thing.
Trevelyan.
008 in no, but that's 006. And I always thought their relationship was strange because they're kind of like buddies in GoldenEye, right?
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that's a fresh take, if anything. The multiverse
in this
element.
movie when the dude strangles the milkman with the wire. the music that's playing in the headphones is like a
Is this-
James Bond song from another James Bond movie. Like,
Oh, it's
like-
from another movie.
I don't
Okay,
think it's
thought
the Living Daylight.
Aha
I
one.
think it's just like another. Yeah, it's just like another James Bond song. So it's
Last
like
question.
they're just being cheeky. Yeah.
Because I was like, well, is this because I was like, are they all the same James Bond? Is this like the Sean Connery James Bond and I'm like, is this still the 60s or is this the 80s? But then I'm remembering that scene where the milkman kills them and he likes to kill people with his headphones, and those headphones would not have existed in the 60s.
No.
They would come along till the 80s. So
And
this must-
Moneypenny is dressed like she's from she's gonna take her glasses off to reveal she's a babe in a Motley Crue video. You know what I mean? She's got the like full body dress, her hair's up. She's gonna take that hair down. And
Yeah.
her
She's
and
gonna
Nikki
leave the
Sixx are gonna
office and then
smooch.
she'll take her dress off. She's got a full leotard and leg warmers underneath, and she's
Exactly.
just jogging or whatever. Yeah. I think it's just a fun fantasy world, right? Where if you think too hard about it, you're gonna run into walls. But if you just kind of like don't care, then don't care. I think it's also one of those things where like people hate this James Bond. Like there's a lot of people
Yeah.
that hate Timothy Dalton's James Bond.
If you push us into production talk, I have a little bit of explanation about that.
All right. Oh wait, you said we're gonna skip the brief history, right?
We all watched it. That's
I
our
mean,
brief-
I've seen him. I saw it when I was a kid, and I remember this one.
This was new for me. I'd only watched it yesterday, and I kind of was watching it right up until I came in here. That's why I was a little late coming in, because I wanted to just. I was like, "What the hell happens in this movie?" I had to kind of watch it twice to really get it.
Yeah. Well, that's our brief history.
A brief history.
Now into production talk.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of Sound. Speed. Action!
So I looked up specifically why do people hate Timothy Dalton so much, and first you have to understand that they
Because he
were coming
rolls his R's.
Yeah.
I'm 007.
His jaw's weird. He's got a weird British jaw. He looks like the British character from Family Guy. No, Roger Moore was beloved, and Roger Moore was a lighter, more fun, funny James Bond. And this movie feels like they did a gritty reboot almost. And also, as part of production hell for this movie, they actually originally wanted to have this be a prequel story that obviously fell through. But I feel like that
Prequel to
I feel
what?
like it was going to be a younger James Bond, and it was going to kind of like the Daniel Craig movies take place they're supposedly take place before everything.
Right.
This was supposed
This
to
is
be
again.
that.
This is where I'm like, fuck off. They're all their own thing. Prequels
Yeah.
to what? To what?
But the reason-
younger Sean Connery. No,
My whole life, I've wondered why people hate Timothy Dalton, because even when I was a kid, I was like, that he looks like James Bond and he's fine. People didn't like the vibe of him directly after the beloved Roger Moore, who
Right.
took up the mantle for so
the
long.
fun James Bond who's like secretly killing people at parades and stuff.
All
Like,
right.
right. Yeah.
Because when I think of James Bond, I think of Sean Connery, but I watched a lot of Roger Moore films with my grandmother, which I talked about last week, and he's kind of my James Bond in a weird way. But I remember watching The Living Daylights and the other Timothy Dalton James Bond when I was a kid a lot because of
The other one
TBS.
is like, isn't Christopher Walken like a drug diamond man? or
It's
something?
80s as fuck. They're both
Yeah.
very 80s as fuck.
Yeah.
And that, just to kind of answer that question, I think it's just like
License
nowadays
to Kill, right? Isn't it? I can't remember.
I think so. Nowadays, people, it's
just
like
remember-
now when people
I think
just
it's the
hate
one with
things 'cause they're
Mayday.
different.
Mayday. She's got like she's like the Bond. She's kind of like the thug. You know, there's like the thug, like the Nazi guy is the thug in this movie, and like Odd Job, like the henchman or whatever. Mayday is
Mhm.
like the henchman in that one, and she's just sort of like this big, tall, muscular woman who just like kicks the shit out of him all the time, and is also dressed to the
it's-
freaking nines.
It's License to Kill,
Yeah. Okay.
which is like a classic, right? Like that's like a classic. James Bond,
Again,
right?
but
Was
this
it
is
just
the
the
thing.
name?
No, I
License
did wanna
Kill
talk
is the
about
classic
this.
part.
I did want to talk about this slightly because we all are sort of steeped in these different fandoms, right? Like, I am very much in the world of Star Wars. Like I have a YouTube channel that is relatively successful, so I get to see the nasty sides of all fandom involving Star Wars. Dave, you have like 12 Star Trek podcasts, and Jason, you're in like the wrestling world, but also just doing this podcast, you get to see all angles of all these different things as well, including Marvel and everything. And like, I remember the first time ever being exposed sort of like to the nasty head rearing of toxic fandom from James Bond as like a child. And it was this guy in my dad's life, like his friend, loved James Bond. It was like his favorite thing in the whole world. He had every Aston Martin model like in a glass display case that he would like have a cleaning woman come in once a week to dust and shit. And like, he eventually got an Aston Martin as an actual car, and he was like vehemently hated Pierce Brosnan. He's like, Pierce Brosnan is the worst fucking thing that ever happened to this French. Like he was so mad, and like then I started to realize like, oh, people really identify with different Bonds, and they will hate the other Bonds in the same way that like people who grew up with the original Star Wars trilogy hate the prequels, and people who grew up with the prequels hate
different
the
versions of
sequels.
Kirk or Spock. Or whatever,
Exactly, yeah.
So,
You weren't here for it when I was reading off the guessing game. Matt DeWolf, who gets the movie right all the time, he classically just likes old movies, and he even says, even though this is the worst Dalton Bond, he's still better than Pierce Brosnan. And I'm like, bro, you're the same age as me. Like, what is that?
But the thing is like people, even just like Jason, we're like extremely close in age, but like even just a couple of years like that makes a difference in this type of opinion. Like that's all it takes is just 2 years difference, and your whole reality shifts. Not just because you actually believe that, but because your parents' friends, people who are older than you when you were a kid, all feed this shit into your head, being like, this Brosnan fucking sucks. It was better with Timothy Dalton. It was better with Roger Moore. And then you become this little sponge of anger running around. I fucking hate Pierce Brosnan. You don't actually hate him.
Internet,
Your dad made you hate him.
Yeah. Multiply that by the internet fucking zeitgeist that just seems to influence us all. Unless
This
you
is pre-internet though, so you didn't.
This is
have
very
the internet
pre-internet
rage. This is like just your household rage.
everyone
Your
was
weird
mad at
dad's
Michael
friend.
Keaton, being
Yeah,
Batman instead
it's
of
true.
Adam West back around this time too.
Yeah, let's bring back Adam West for the
That was,
gritty
and
Tim
that was
Burton
seriously like what my
Gothic
dad
remake.
wanted. He was like, "Why would you make a Batman without Adam West? It makes no sense, right?"
And where the
Because
hell's Robin? Who the
Batman's
hell's
cool
Robin?
now. And where's
And how
Robin?
come Batman
Where's
doesn't dance anymore?
Mr. Mom, why would you get him? But what was the
That's right.
decision to go from Roger Moore to Timothy Dalton? Was it just like Roger Moore was done with it, or did they want a new younger actor? Or
From what I read, Roger Moore was going to do it, and then he was like, "Nah, I'm going to pass this mantle." I think he did 8 movies or something. He was the guy for more than a decade, from the 70s right through.
It's wild to think though that like Daniel Craig has been doing it for almost 20 fucking years now. Actually I think more than 20 years. But I mean, obviously he's done now, but up until a couple of years ago, it was like I think he has done not the most Bond movies, but the longest time as Bond, unbroken. Because I think Sean Connery left, and then the Lazenby movie happened, and then Sean Connery came back for I think like either 1 or 2 more after that. And then Moore took over, and Dalton, I think they not only did they, I think he just didn't want to do it. They wanted to drastically change the tone. And to look at it now, the tone kind of still feels a little goofy, but it is very different to the Roger Moore movies, even just visually. Like they've shot it all completely differently than the Moore movies. The costumes are upgraded, the vibe, the music changes quite a bit. It's like a whole rebranding, and I guess people liked it enough that they made a second one, but then they changed it once again to the, in my opinion, superior Pierce Brosnan movies. With
I'm a Brosnan guy, like more than Daniel Craig, and I'd say that Dalton, watching this, he reminded me just in his physicality, most like Brosnan. Like
I would say he's got the same hairstyle for sure.
Yeah, just that general vibe, but also the way he kind of does the action too, and
there is a presence about Dalton as well. Like his voice is quite striking. Like just the way He sounds like he's artificially deepening his voice all the time. Like when the guy's like, "How many times have you tested this?" And he's like, "This is the first time." You're like, "Okay, all right, Batman." Jeez.
So some other little production notes during the segment. The box office was 191 mil with a budget of 40 mil, which means sequel. And it was, of course, directed by John Glenn, who also did other James Bond movies like Octopussy, Free Eyes Only, A View to a Kill. He also directed the Aha music video for this movie, which I think is hilarious when that happens. But this guy is a certified Bond guy. He did 4 of them. Did I say 4? 4. So that's interesting about him. And it was written by Richard Maibaum, Michael G. Wilson, and Ian Fleming. Well, that's just a credit, of course. So those are just sort of some little facts. I think the biggest thing to note is that the fact that it made triple its money. So these James Bond movies have pretty much always been, from a box office standpoint, certified bangers. Do you guys know of any James Bond movies that actually flopped? I was curious about this because I thought that's why people didn't. I thought this was going to be a bad movie because people hate Timothy Dalton so much.
No, it's a bad movie in the same way people hate Star Wars Episode 1. It made so much fucking money, and people find it as so. There are people out there in the world that exist. Timothy Dalton is their favorite Bond. This is their favorite Bond movie. These people exist. I haven't met them, but they definitely exist somewhere in the world. You know,
I'd never heard of this one, which is strange. I knew who Timothy
There's
Dalton
fucking
was.
25 James Bond movies.
That's-
Jason. we can forgive you.
I imagine that the sequel to this didn't do so well. That's why they ended up kind of doing a whole reboot a few years later and a new get Brosnan.
I imagine that like Dalton probably was getting a lot of hate as well, and he was probably like, "Well, I'm not welcome here." He like probably walked off into the night. But I mean, I can't imagine being an actor joining a franchise and just the world shitting on me, in like publications and probably getting hate mail and stuff. You probably wouldn't want to stick around either.
Well, look at Jake Lloyd. It ruined his life.
Yeah. He developed several mental illnesses because of his treatment as a child.
And now, 26 years later, Phantom Menace, great Star Wars movie, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I don't think that's a hot take. I think we all kind of.
I love that is a chicken noodle movie that I watch all the time when I'm feeling fluish or sick. I'm like, all right, Jar Jar, put me to sleep.
It's okay. Like, it's got its problems, Like, I'm not a huge Star Wars guy. I like the Star Wars movies, but I'm not. But if they make a bad one, I don't lose sleep over it.
Yeah, I am a huge Star Wars person. I will defend Episode 1, but I also am completely aware that it is not a great movie. It has many, many, many issues, not just Jar Jar Binks.
But it's got a lot of good things in it too.
Of course, it has a 25-minute pod racer sequence that I love.
Yeah, and
that lightsaber fight is a lot of fun. I think the whole final act battle is good in that movie. But anyway,
yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the Living Daylights, not
we're going to
Phantom
talk
Menace.
about the final act of this film in just I was going to say a few minutes, but let's be realistic, about 4 hours from now. Do you have anything that you want to mention, Steve or Dave, about the production of this film before we move on?
It's probably not going to come up. It might come up on like a Noel episode or something, but I am very curious because Steven Spielberg was like famously trying to direct a James Bond movie for like a very, very long time. And they just kept denying it. Steven Spielberg. You guys are familiar with Steven Spielberg, right?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he made a movie. He made this movie called Et and another movie about dinosaurs.
Yeah, I think they made a few bucks.
They made a couple bucks.
He got the Shark movie.
He did the Shark movie. But I think there was like a thing for a while where it was like American directors were stigmatized and they only wanted to have British filmmakers making the movies or something. I don't know for sure. I'm probably butchering this story, but Steven Spielberg is still kind of butthurt to this day about not getting to do a James Bond movie. But like, I think his time has passed, right? As a director, I'm sure he could competently make a James Bond movie, but like a Steven Spielberg, in terms of what we think of when we think of Spielberg, like Jurassic Park and E.T. and Jaws and all that, that era is gone. And this is, I think, is like the death of it. I think the Roger Moore era, maybe leading into this, is where Steven Spielberg would shine as Bond director? I just wanted to like pick
The-
your brains.
The
on that a
English
little
are
bit.
very particular about and the British overall, but about protecting the things they consider to be theirs, and they got that protect. They don't want to be swallowed up by the Americans. Who would ever think of such a thing? And so like J.K. Rowling famously didn't want like any non-British people cast in any of those movies.
Yeah.
I think that like there were American directors though.
Oh yeah, the first two were directed by Christopher Columbus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they were like, we can't let Spielberg come in here and ruin our James Bond. He's going to make it all American, and there's going to be an alien in it, or Reese's Pieces, or something. I don't know what their fears were, but I can imagine that conversation.
I want to
Hilarious
also,
fear.
I do also want to add that like what happened out of that was that he and one of his greatest friends, George Lucas, director of Star Wars Episode 1: Phantom Menace, George Lucas was like, "Hey, buddy, don't worry about it. I got something better. I got something way better for us." And Spielberg is like, "What?" And that's what Indiana Jones is. It's a globe-trotting, hero who goes around the world basically doing James Bond stuff, except he's fighting Nazis and ghosts and all sorts of like weird.
I was thinking
fantasy.
about
Yeah.
Indiana Jones a lot during this particular one because they do end up in a desert. Like this James
John Rhys
Bond.
Davies, too.
John Rhys Davies, yeah, and also the globe-trotting nature of him just always in a different country. It seems like every country in the world sort of borders on each other in this one. I don't
you
know
can
the
drive
logistics. Yeah. Europe is small, but like Russia to Vienna like that.
He was trying to fly to Pakistan only to say, I can't land on any of these mountains, but then somehow he backed out a Jeep onto the.
Yeah.
Listen, he literally sleds from one country to another in this movie,
Exactly.
down a hill.
And then he doesn't. It's like, I have nothing to declare. Frappuccino."
except the cello.
I know a great restaurant around in this country. Let's
Exactly.
go.
Lean left.
Get back my dinner.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
I think we can-
I feel like I was gonna forget about that Steven Spielberg fact if I didn't bring it up at some point in the next 3 episodes.
It was like how Tarantino wants to direct a Star Trek movie, and they're always like, maybe, but no. And like, so,
He's like, but I don't want to count it as one of my 10 because he wants to have like a clean 10 discography or filmography, I should say.
yeah, my best.
I
friend's
would
birthday,
love.
his
I would
best movie.
love. I would love. I always think about like because he did say like I would maybe do a Star Wars movie at some point, but I would want it to be my Star Wars. And I'm like, imagine a scene where it's just like the whole movie is them playing Sabacc, like the Star Wars version of fucking poker, and it just ends with like Chewbacca ripping a guy's arm off or something. Like I would be very into that.
Sure.
But again, Star Wars is for kids, guys. I don't know if you know this. Anytime somebody's like, "This Star Wars is too childish," I'm like, "It's for children, you stupid fucking."
It always
idiot."
was.
It always was, and it always will be.
Yeah.
I guess Andor isn't really that movie. I can't see a child enjoying Andor all that much.
I think a Tarantino Star Wars would be pulpy, or even a Star Trek. Either way, I think it would be pulpy.
I didn't
It'd be
say
like,
that it should be made. I said that I would love to see it. There's a difference.
fair enough.
I don't
Quentin
think
Tarantino.
Yeah,
I was against the making of Cats, and it's still a bad movie, but I had to see it.
I had to do
Because
it.
I was like, I can't believe they spent millions and millions of dollars on this. Like,
I went to see Cats in a theater, like in a the production, and then went home after and watched the movie with my wife, who is a huge fan because we saw the stage play, and what a terrible afternoon I had.
Did you watch? I watched it in a theater as well. Did people walk out of your screening?
No, I mean I went to see the stage, like the musical,
Oh, the musical.
and then we were like, we do this thing where if we see a musical, we go home and watch the movie after, right? So we did that for Cage of Foie and Les Mis and Spam-A-Lot. Like we went home and watched the thing after, and that one was.
You watched the thing after?
I always just watch the thing after. No, we went to see the stage musical production of Cats, which is insane. I was sober for it, and I'm like, I should be on acid for this. And then we went home and watched the movie, which had just come out. God, what a bad movie. What a bad movie!
I went
Just
to
said.
see it in the movie in a theater, like when it came out.
Insanity.
And people walked out. People paid money to go into the theater, and then they walked out about 10 minutes in because like these cats are way too horny. We can't stay. So
That's kind
Isn't
of
cats like a
what it
big allegory for like AIDS or something? Isn't that? I've never
maybe
seen cats.
like I'm not sure if there was a message in this movie, but it was other than cats are horny.
Cats are horny.
Cats are horny. It's based
That's
off
the moral.
of
That's the moral.
And
of
so
the
is James
story.
Bond. So just gets back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Goes
yeah,
back.
yeah.
James Bond parachutes down onto a boat, and he immediately is like, "Better make that 2 hours."
2 hours.
Oh wow.
Well, speaking of, do you want to go into the body of the episode?
Yeah, you want a long body or a short body?
I want a long body, buddy.
Ho, 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 ho! Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
I think you have to do the long body for James Bond month because wow, what a pervert. He loves to do the babes that he encounters. This one only has one Bond girl throughout the whole thing. I thought later in the movie where those ladies pull up, I was like, oh, is Karen not the Bond girl? But as we find out, they're just agents. Women can be agents too. Sorry. Czechoslovakia, Bratislava. Bond is sent to assist the defection of General Gorgei Kozkov, a Soviet officer. But before that,
we're skipping
There's
over
the
that.
whole intro.
The
we
intro
get
is
the-
awesome. It's so
with
good.
paintball.
we get a cold open of paintball. They send agents into this like facility. I thought it was going to be like an actual thing. So I was surprised when a guy gets beamed with a paintball, and I was like, wow, I see why people hate these Timothy Dalton movies. The blood looks
Why is
terrible.
the blood pink and look like it's made of baby powder?
It's Klingon blood.
Yeah. And out loud, I went,
forgot about
"Oh."
the pink Klingon blood. Yeah, that's not consistent through all, right? It's
No,
just- yeah, it's
that
just
was a
the
thing
one.
in Lower Decks where they're like Klingon blood runs pinkish reddish as ever. You know, you'll see. Sometimes red, sometimes pink.
Sometimes pink.
We also get the James Bond walk across and shoot, which I think happens in every movie. We're gonna find out.
It does.
And the production compared to the first movie is night and day. The first movie felt like Blue Hawaii starring Elvis. This one feels like an 80s action film right from the get-go. And the Double O's have been, I thought that they were like chosen to infiltrate this place. Like I said, they
It's
have-
called a fucking bait and switch. They're just doing training. It's a training exercise.
But
Right.
this is why I had to go back and watch it again because like there's this guy in the plane at the beginning who's telling the 00 agents like this is an exercise, but I expect you to win, and I guess they're going against the military in the middle of the day. The daylights,
living
but then
daytime.
there's a guy there that is killing the 00 agents, and he wants death to all spies or something. And
yeah, and I was, it doesn't show the little note. The guy reads it and he's like, "Whoa," and then he looks up and
he
then falls.
clips it on.
I'm
turns
like, why don't
into
you
a dummy.
climb down the rope before he cuts it?
Zip
Or
down.
grab the cliff.
Locked,
He doesn't
yeah.
even try. He just like,
Or yeah, grab the cliff. Yeah, like he's like, no,
do anything.
That's it for me, buddy.
Yeah.
I thought it was great, actually. This whole sequence is cool when they're diving because it clearly. How do they do shots like this back then? Somebody has like a full movie camera like on their shoulder, and then they're doing a dive.
A lot of it is helicopter shots, like they'll be in a helicopter. But sometimes, yeah, they would get into a parachute and they would slow down with them. They would fly down with them. But a lot of it is helicopter photography. For this
It was
movie,
very good.
don't know at all. But there is some good cinematography in this movie throughout, like some fun, creative camera angles that you don't necessarily always get from what I would consider like a safe franchise. Like, you watch Marvel movies and stuff, and sometimes there are movies that get creative with what they're doing, and then a lot of the time it's just sort of the same boilerplate bullshit where they're like, and then the CGI team will take over because we've been working on this action sequence for 3 years, and I know it doesn't fit into your movie, but we're gonna slap it in here anyway for Ant-Man and the Wasp or whatever the fuck.
For all that good, when the guy falls off the cliff, it is the most hilarious fake like.
Oh yeah, it's a dummy that I
Yeah.
guess has
Yeah.
animatronics in it because it's going like this, like, but it's like clearly
and that was
little
003. Is that what we're told?
That was 004.
Four.
Yeah.
I can't get the numbers straight.
It's okay. I can't keep the letters straight. The numbers I'm good with though. And I like the mystery, but at the same time I'm like, are we gonna get to see what's on that note? And then when you do see the note, it's just written in Russian. And they don't tell you right away. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like I don't know what that means. It didn't reveal anything to me. So I was just like 00 disappointed. That's what I should have.
But
So James Bond gets the guy, right? He gets the assassin by the end of the sequence.
Yes, so he jumps on
Yeah.
the truck, and the truck is escaping, and it's full of explosives. I'm not sure if they're real explosives or not, but I think they're just like paintball explosives because when they start shooting at it, it starts to like have all this pink mist come out of the truck, and then he blinds the guy, I think, and then the guy drives off a cliff, and he's still got his parachute on, so he just
He had 2 parachutes. Is that what I'm led to believe?
or there was one in the truck. I don't know. I think he still had his parachute on from before, so he just like he has a back.
But he had. Oh, maybe it's a backup parachute.
Yeah, parachute has a backup in it.
Because they start out, it's the cliffs of Gibraltar is where this takes place, right? And they're at the top of it, and then like this whole sequence, like when they finally come down, but then they go off the cliff. So I guess they're still pretty high up. So he needs to activate the second parachute, and then he lands with the woman. And
in the middle of that though, we do get the aha version of the Living Daylights, and we get in the first James Bond movie, they don't really have the classic women swimming around in a pool in silhouette, and that happens like in smack dab in the middle of this, and we come back.
Well, that's how
him.
every James Bond movie.
Yeah,
not every, but the majority will have a cold open similar to the one in this movie, and then something will happen, and James Bond will be like, "Sucky, sucky, motherfucker," and then it'll
minor.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it comes,
in
back,
this one, he said he must have been the jabroni of Gibraltar or something. And he
but in this one, it cuts back to him. It goes right to a high-speed chase with a truck filled with explosives. He tussles with a guy from on top of the truck, cuts his way through, goes in, and the truck falls off the cliff, which I thought was like pretty goofy the way that it does that. And Bond activates his parachute, the truck explodes, and that's when Bond lands on the boat.
And there's a woman like, you can't find any good men these days.
Everybody out here is either a pervert or a fucking crypt keeper.
Yeah. Right. But then she's like, "Stay, Mr. Bond. You're just."
Yeah, she's like, "Would you not like to have a drink with me?" And he's like, "I'm gonna make that 2
Better make that 2.
I love how this happened in the first movie too. I assume this is a thing where they're like, you have to go get the VIP immediately, or else the world will end. And he's always like, "Yes, but this woman is incredibly attractive. Can I just?" And then
that doesn't happen in all of them. This is just. I kind of like this because at first you're like, "Oh, he's just being a creepy horn dog," but then you're like, "Oh, but he also recognizes that she has no idea how to hold the gun," and like he's like, something feels very off about this. She's the cellist of the music we were just listening to, but she also sucks with this gun. Like she's terrible with it. But we're jumping ahead a little bit too much here.
No, and I'd also like to. Sorry, I was wrong. The note that I wrote was 80s version of the theme. I thought the intro played during this, but I was just commenting on the fact that during the sequence, an 80s version of the actual James Bond theme plays. So you hear like the da na na na, but it's also like that synthy, like new wave kind of music.
It sounds like a video game. It's really good.
Exactly.
I thought that was because you sent me a message like in the middle of the day yesterday, like the middle of the work day, and I'm like, Jason's watching this shit at work, of course, and you're like, best fucking James Bond track I ever heard. And I'm like, he's hearing the video game music and being like, imagining playing like a Sega game or something. Like, that's
well, actually, let me ask you guys this, because this is something I wondered watching the first one, thinking about GoldenEye, the video game, and then watching this. I think this particular movie would make a good video game, like a good. Yeah. It's got stages that he goes to. It's got a pretty good arc.
A lot of different villains. You can make a GoldenEye version of this game. Or this
that's what I mean. Like, I think
the first level you'd be playing paintball.
Yeah,
you're out. Yeah, got you.
but like Necros, he's not a well-known Bond villain because he's like the odd job. Not Necros is I call him the kidnapper because he's always kidnapping people. But
I was just
his
gonna call him
name
the
is
Milkman because that it was the
Or the
coolest part,
Milkman.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's his name is Necros. Okay.
Necros. Yeah.
It's a good name though. It makes you. It sounds like you're some sort of like enforcer for the undead. It's like
Exactly.
They call me Necros. I send people to hell.
He's always dressed like some form of milkman or nurse.
Well, I love like the Hitman video games, right? And like especially the newer ones that have come out in the last few years because of the fact that the name of the game is infiltration and sneaking and assassination. And clearly this movie was an inspiration for somebody that worked on that team because the Hitman himself, Agent 47, like switching his costume. You can be a hitman, you can be a milkman, you can be a security guard, you can change all your costumes, you can make weird things into bombs. Just like remember he's like throwing the milk and it's exploding. I'm like, I don't understand how this is working right now, but I fucking love the fact that he's just like take a milk bottle and it just explodes. Like,
That's we'll talk about that when we get to it because that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible that this is something I wasn't expecting. The same band that wrote the song "Take on Me,"
Yes.
the incredible 80s, epic 80s song, like one of the defining 80s songs of the decade, did one of the best James Bond themes I've ever heard overall. Because there's been a lot that hit the like top 40. I
find it crazy that you think this is one of the best. It's making me question how many James Bond movies you've seen. Because I'm like, you think this is one of the best ones?
I'm only
You're
really
crazy.
familiar with the Daniel Craig ones because those ones are more modern.
GoldenEye.
Like
GoldenEye.
What about
but Billie
the,
Eilish did one. Like
what's the one with
it's
Madonna? Is that Die Another Day?
Yeah, I guess
Die
die
Another day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty catchy.
Ding, 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 ding.
When I was listening to this Aha theme, I didn't know it was Aha right away. I was like, "Oh, did David Bowie do this theme?" And it made sense
That's-
when I found
yeah.
out it was Aha, but because it's a similar kind of singing style. But
No, you're right. Yeah, I
you know.
I actually, you know what? I think much like our names, we went in the same direction. I think I had the same notion as well when I heard that at first because the lead
Do
singer.
you guys
of
have
Aha-
a favorite one overall? I don't know if you're familiar enough with all of them, but like I definitely can name a few that I'm like, this is probably in my top 5.
My favorite, I'll tell you what my favorite James Bond theme. It's from a little movie called Spy Hard, and it's by Weird Al.
Okay.
well, that's kind of a not correct. But I think it actually for me is Die Another Day because I love that's the one where he's like held in that Korean prison
Yeah.
for a year and he's being
And the guy has
tortured.
like diamonds in his face. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like how like they show that whole like sequence and like it with the song and all the animations.
Yeah.
And so
I think
was-
that like movies, especially after this one, like, or maybe not, because a lot of them use it as a storytelling element where they're like, we're going to ensure that you realize there's a passage of time here, but we're gonna do it stylistically and entertaining. And I think you're right. Like it does show a moment of James Bond's life. I think Skyfall is another really good example where it's like thematically showing all of the stuff that ties into the movie in an impactful way. And like GoldenEye, for example, not really. It's just showing like pretty much naked women like with Soviet hammers and sickles and stuff.
yeah,
Like,
that one
dink,
not so much.
dink.
It's-
But I like the
it's-
song. The song is good. Goldfinger, I think, rules as like such a good song.
Goldfinger, right?
Yeah,
It's like that.
that's right, Jason. You got it.
That's how it goes.
I kind of like the Jack White Rihanna. Is it Jack White and Rihanna? I think they did one together, which I thought was pretty good.
Of the newer ones.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Quantum of Solace, maybe. But yeah, I got to go with the Lazenby, man, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. That fucking song rules. It rules so hard that the James Bond theme has adopted elements from that song into just adding it to James Bond like original soundtracks and
So
stuff.
that's iconic then, right?
Yeah.
Actually, my actual favorite one is the one that Guns N' Roses covered.
Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die. That because that growing.
I like how
up
you said
had-
the one that Guns N' Roses covered instead of the one that the Beatles wrote.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But the reason why it sticks in my head so much is I had the Guns N' Roses cover album when I was like a formidable teen. the Spaghetti Incident, which is all covers, and it's on that. And I remember listening to that a lot. But yes,
I called
you're
the
right.
spaghetti incident one time. I was being tickled by someone, and I kept telling them to stop, and then I threw up all over them, and it was spaghetti. That's what I call the
It's
spaghetti incident.
that was the Spaghetti Incident for you.
Yeah.
That's right.
That person never tickled me again.
No, because they had your puke on them. What a yeah. Thank you.
He's here
It's
all
funny
day,
because-
folks.
Yeah, that's just been the show for this week. We'll see you next week when we're covering the Spaghetti Incident.
Are you guys familiar with the On Her Majesty's Secret Service song? No.
No,
Yeah, okay.
I'm not. This is the oldest I've ever gone back. 87.
If you hear it, you'll be like, oh, I didn't even know that was a song that is not a part of like just the James Bond pantheon of music. I thought that was like a James Bond theme. It's not just an opening credit sequence. It's like a song that you will immediately recognize. I think it's probably the best one. It's so good. It's so goddamn good. But I also like the fucking Casino Royale one. That one's pretty good.
With the new one or the old one?
Not the old Casino Royale. That's like a spoof movie. But like the what's it called? Like what is it? Fuck, what are the lyrics? I can't remember the lyrics, but I'm like remembering the song itself. Come on, you can do this, Steve. Think about the spaghetti incident. It'll jog your memory. I can't remember.
By
You take
Oh, yeah.
a line,
Take a chance and you win it all.
The theme from Spy Hard.
Yeah.
Now you're watching Spy
Hold
Hard.
on, let me look this up.
Well,
Keep
just that
talking.
you bring up Spy Hard, the other thing that this movie really made me think of was I used to love that show Get Smart, which was
Right, yeah.
completely in reruns on white TV when I was growing up. But like this, I guess like just like the KGB versus the MI6 and the whole like I guess chaos and control, and that's what this movie really reminded me of, like that old kind of, I don't know, the two spy groups going at each other more. Because when you go into GoldenEye, it's post Cold War, right? It's after the fall, and like they're trying to define what James Bond is, you know, after the Iron Curtain comes down, and now we're friends with Russia forever, and we'll always be fine.
Yeah.
So,
Totally fine.
but this is like fully like in that adversarial mode. But there, I don't know. He has a good relationship with the John Rice Davies character being the KGB guy, right? You know?
Yeah, I think that's also sort of the magic of James Bond always, right? Is that he has allies all over the world, and like no matter what the government agencies are doing in terms of fighting one another, he's always got some guy on the inside that he can look to. Like the Brosnan movies carry this over, so do the Craigs, all of them really. That he's always got allies everywhere. Because these spies all have to like interact with each other at some point during these secret wars that are happening, right? Which is just like adds to the coolness of James Bond, right? Being like, oh, he has like a pal deep in Soviet Russian territory who he's friends with. But I also love a good. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead again, but like I love a good fake assassination. It's like one of my most favorite things in all movies, especially when it's done well. And I think this one has a pretty good one.
I can move us forward a little bit.
Yeah, move us forward past the
So-
opening credits.
We're at we get to the symphony. This is in Czechoslovakia. I asked the question, why do people think Timothy Dalton is a bad Bond? He's fine, handsome, and looks like James Bond looks. I was a note that I made, and we've talked about that already. The first Bond gadget we see is his suit that turns into a darker suit. I noticed when they go up into that hotel room to like, he's like, turn the lights off, and he takes his suit and like folds it over to make a black suit. You know,
Yeah, he just yeah.
I was like, what is that? Oh, so like he's a better sniper. He's less obvious.
So he's less obvious
because the
More
white
hidden.
of the white of the
shirt
V
would
won't
stand
show through
out.
the window, right?
Like not his, you know, his white skin. You know, like you know, they just put a mask on or anything. Like,
his giant white head.
yeah, but no.
They discuss the KGB general.
It'd be funny if he like did that, and then he like pulled his cufflinks off and like put some like black makeup all over.
And then he's in blackface accidentally. But he pulls out a gun for this to protect Koskov, I think. And the gun is crazy. I think that gun is actually in GoldenEye. I remember
It is.
It's like
yeah.
a snipe. It's like a Soviet sniper.
The model
rifle.
of it, yeah. Those in the game, they weren't allowed to legally like use the names of all the guns, or maybe ethically, I don't know. But they changed all of them to have different names, but they used similar attributes physically to emulate them in the games.
But it's an insane gun. I was taken aback by how ridiculous this gun was, and we see Koskov like leaving. They track the sniper. It's the woman from the orchestra, and Bond doesn't shoot to kill because he's trying to fuck. That was my original theory, but he basically says later that he only kills professionals, and she didn't seem professional.
Yeah, later on when she's like, "Why didn't you kill me?" and he's like passing out, I thought he was gonna be like, "Too hot."
There's this other guy there, this British agent. I guess he's an MI6 guy, and he's like superior to Bond, and he gives Bond shit when Bond shows up at the orchestra, and he's like, "You're late. You're always fooling around with the ladies or whatever you're doing." And then they get up to do this sniper thing. I guess because the Russians know if Koskov tries to defect that there's going to be a counter sniper, and they're there to do that. So he's like ordering him to kill the woman who doesn't know the other gun, and I was like, this guy must be a bad guy, right? He's gonna
Anders, yeah, he's got that sort of like smarmy, like he's gonna be a bad guy reveal at some point, right? And it's like, no,
it
he's
turns
just
out
a
no.
shitty guy. He's
kind of a James Bond foil, but the foil is that he is like upper management.
Yeah, or middle management, really.
Or middle management. Like he's just his supervisor, is like barely his boss. He's just reporting to other people, and every time that they interact, it's always like Bond being like, "Hey," and him being like,
I don't approve.
Yeah, I'm gonna write my report to M, and he's like, "You go ahead, go tell him what I did."
He says, "Suck my M," and he's like, "What? I don't even know what that means." 007.
So she escapes, and they head to some sort of factory, and the woman that they interact with is an incredible character. But this was a thing where how much of this is connected, because she's like, "It's so good to work with you again." Is this character in a Roger Moore movie, or is this a
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if yes, but I love the character. I think she's still fucking
she's the one who like gets the distraction with her boobs and everything.
Yeah.
Like, it was
I also like weirdly was like, I'm kind of into this woman.
I was definitely into
If
it.
she wanted to take me on a date, I would say yes.
she's not that kind of woman. Don't get the wrong idea.
Yeah, don't
No,
get the
I didn't
wrong
say
idea.
that I want to nestle my face into her enormous breasts. I was just to want to hang out with her.
Look, she had some things going for her, despite her being a hard-nosed blue collar type. They stuffed the VIP into Koskov into a like a tube that's meant to like a pipe.
It's for the
And they've-
pipeline.
A transcontinental
oil
pipeline of some sort. Yeah, like.
But they have retrofitted it with what I wrote in my notes as a like a gun type bullet. That they
gun type
stuffed-
bullet. You mean a
Yep.
bullet?
Yes,
Okay.
they
A human-sized bullet.
A human-sized bullet. They say, "We've never tested this before. You're the first person to ever go through this." Also, if you noticed, the pipe was like this with no like curve,
Oh,
so
God,
it looked like he was just gonna.
Yeah, the guy was.
Yeah.
As she says, if you press the button before this hits 100, he gets turned into a borscht. I'm like, oh shit, borscht. I don't know what that is, but I assume goo. Does
It was.
mean
It was
goo?
also reminding me of like in old '80s movies, which this is, when there's like an office and they're sending messages up to like the upper floor. Those
the
like
pneumatic
tubes.
tubes.
The pneumatic tubes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like they're gonna pneumatic tube this guy to another fucking country. The woman seduces the guy watching the board as a distraction. Oh wow! It shoots him across the border to Austria. Just 15 minutes of smuggling this man has happened during this time. So this goes back to what we were all talking about at the beginning of this episode, where this movie could have been shortened by not just like doing less and making the things they're doing.
There's a
mean
lot.
more.
So I fell asleep when I was watching this last night. So I was scrubbing through the parts where I'm like, did I fall asleep? I can't remember. So I was just like, where I remembered things I would skip over. Then I got to points where I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot of him just like sneaking around, especially near the end. It's just him sneaking around for like a good 20 minutes of the movie no talking really. There's maybe a couple of lines of like, all right, get down, or okay, we're almost there, like that kind of stuff. It really didn't need to be
Was
as
this-
much sneaking around as
Was this something people liked in the 80s? Because
Sneaky shit?
these were
Yeah, probably.
this is my critique of Escape from New York and Escape from LA. Like those movies they're both great, but it's a lot of Snake Plissken just kind of sneaking around. Like get to it. But
Well,
I
like-
think we're all
Back
We
on
all
this whole
have
like
husks.
Cold War thing too. Like,
Okay,
so
yeah.
they have to smuggle him out. He can't just leave in a car.
Yeah.
He has to be shipped into Austria, which my dad's fiance, my future stepmother, she was from Hungary, and which was under the Soviet control, and she had to get out into Austria, right, in order to escape to the West back in like the 80s or whatever. And I'm gonna ask her, were you shipped out by pipeline, like that guy?
Did they
at
put
the
you into a
bottom?
pneumatic tube for
Yeah.
humans?
He had tested it already, and you were like, "This is a safe way to get to the West." But like the other thing that also like trying to understand this Cold War era, that Czechoslovakia is just a place that British people can go and Russians can go, but like that, you know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like, is this like neutral ground, kind of like?
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know enough about it. Again, I wasn't really alive when this happened, so like I only learned about it briefly in like the 7th grade. They didn't teach me too much about it. I don't know how it works now, but
Because at the end, like the Kara, she gets like a visa so she can like come and go, right? Which
As
is
she
very
pleases,
rare,
yeah.
I guess, for a Czech citizen at this time, because they're controlled by these oppressive Soviets who don't let them have freedom.
I knew like there was a Czech family living in Nova Scotia when I was a kid, and we were me and my buddy Jacob were friends with, and they seemed like they were like Russia light, like almost like Ukraine. Like it's like
the Crystal Pepsi of Russian.
Yeah, like Poland was kind of a similar deal, and Hungary, is the other example where they weren't
like Russia
part-
is the oppressive state, and then all the little countries around it are just like, okay, bow down, but also if you come here, it's not horrible. It's kind of like Canada and the United States is going to be,
Yeah,
like
it's like Ukraine was straight up a member of the Soviet Union, whereas like certain countries like Czechoslovakia were not technically, but they kind of almost were. But I don't know. So
let us know in the chat if our facts are incorrect. But I have to.
Oh,
I have to
Vladimir Putin just messaged us.
you are all wrong, comrade. You know nothing.
You know nothing.
I have to welcome
Now,
you guys.
would you like to bury your face in my tits? He's like, you know that picture of him on the horse where he's
Yeah.
shirtless?
Yeah, that's
which
what
isn't
you guys-
AI because it's from 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was really him.
The thing I'd like to welcome you guys into now is something that I like to call
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
They scared the living daylights out of him.
I thought that the movie was gonna have the thing where just like the intro music says the name of the movie, but the title drop is at 22 minutes and 10 seconds, and he's literally driving away with his middle manager buddy, and he says, whoever she was must have scared the living daylights out of her. And then he basically looks at the camera and smiles like a complete dickhead, which I
He
laughed at.
doesn't. He looks ahead. The
I
camera's
know,
here. He's
but-
laughing at his own thing that he said. For
Exactly.
Sure. He's remembering that he shot a gun and was like,
With a gun.
fucking scared the shit out of her. That's for damn sure. Which, I mean, if you were that good of a crack shot and you shot
I
a
loved it.
sniper rifle while they were trying to snipe and you scared the living daylights out of them, I would probably think about that all the time and laugh too. I'd be like brushing my teeth. Scared the living daylights out of them.
I meant it tongue in cheek, but I thought it was really funny that we're half hour into this movie.
Listen, Jason, if you shot a sniper rifle out of a sniper's hands, you would be thinking about it all the fucking time for the rest of your.
I guess I scared the living daylights out of her.
But this was she was put up to it by Yorgi Koskov is his last name, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, but they keep calling him Yorgi.
Because I think they're dating, right? Like he
Right.
bought her.
Yeah,
a
that's his
pillow.
girlfriend allegedly. Allegedly, we'll
he's
see
like,
why.
listen, Kara, I'm going to sneak out the bathroom window at a certain time in the show. So I need you to go up to the top of the building and hold a rifle out the window.
And just wave it around like
and
you're
just
gonna
wave
shoot
it
me.
around. No,
Yeah.
and she says yes. Like
Yeah.
why? Like and because we're led to believe she's a good character in this movie. But I'm
I think
like,
she's
I
just
don't know.
supposed to be a dumbass. Like she's not very smart. Throughout
Yeah.
the entire movie, she doesn't do a single like smart. Even like the first movie, Doctor No, the character at least had some sort of agency. Like she wasn't an intelligent character per se, but at least she had agency in the environment they were in. She knew everything about it, right? Like
Right.
it's like, oh, she's not really logically smart, but like everything around her makes sense for her character, and she knows more about.
No, but she
Maybe
has
rounding
a
area.
boyfriend and starts making out with James Bond almost immediately. Like anytime
Yeah,
that
and I
he's
don't
like,
think she's.
I'm-
I think she's not a very well written character, guys.
There are
She's-
times in this movie where she's like action star, like she's leading the Afghanis, and like,
yeah, the Afghani part. Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
that just makes her seem stupid. She's like, I'm going to go right after them. And she pulls the fucking rifle out and rides after the convoy of trucks, like just behind them. They're going to see her and shoot her ass.
and then she like drives the Jeep into the plane, and then she's
And he's
flying
like,
the
throws it
plane. I
apart.
know I'm jumping ahead, but then then all of a sudden, like James Bond gets into the cockpit. He's like, "You're flying us into a mountain. What are you doing?" And
Yeah.
like, it's just,
Also, he's trying to fly and she's hugging his face and he's like, Carter, cut.
That part blew my mind when she's like, "Oh, I can't believe you're still alive," and he's like, "I'm flying a plane.
Yeah.
Can you stop touching me right now?"
yeah.
We go back to MI6. We meet the money penny of this film. I noticed that the relationship. It's been 15 movies. I don't know what happens in between. In the first movie, the relationship seems reciprocal, where Bond and Moneypenny seem to have sort of a like flirty relationship. But in this, Moneypenny is like pining after James Bond. We'll get to that in a second. The first Bond gadget we see is a ghetto blaster that
We're making it for the
Q-
Americans, 007. They call it a ghetto blast.
Q literally refers to the ghetto blaster as the ghetto blaster, which I laughed out loud as. Bond doesn't
the
seem
Ghetto Blaster rule when he's like, he like hits the tape deck button and like a like a little targeting device comes over his eye.
Yeah.
And it opens up and you just it's great. It's great. It's the goofy shit that I love in most Bonds have it. They got rid of it for even the later Brosnans, they don't do it as much. It's more sexy tech, like when John Cleese takes over as Q and he's like, it's an invisible car. And you're like, okay, cool. But
I
even
think the most
Goldeneye has like
egregious.
even Goldeneye has like a pretty good gadget sequence and a good funny moment in it as well when he's like, what does this do? And he picks up a sandwich and Q's like, don't touch that 007. That's my lunch.
I think the most egregious Bond gadget in this is the glasses that are binoculars. Just use binoculars at that point. And we'll get to that. The Moneypenny thing is sort of weird for me too, after seeing them be smitten with each other, because she invites him over and he says, nope, pats her on the butt. I thought that was bizarre. And it was much more one-sided.
It was like two
So-
slaps on the bum.
Yeah.
She wants him to come over to listen to Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that a euphemism for exactly? Like, can we get more specific? But he's not into it.
Is Barry Manilow horny music? I don't even know.
I don't think so. No. I would say. I
Yeah.
would say no, not at all. It's like
Not
crooner
even a
music.
little bit.
Prairie in the 1980s,
Barry
I thought when you
Manilow-
said 2 slaps on the butt, they're gonna be like 2 slaps on the butt arms the device 007 and 1 slap on the butt this arm.
It arms Moneypenny, and then she will ignite.
Mhm. Barry
So-
Manilow.
We move over to Necros, which is the name that I had to look up. I don't think his name's ever said in the film, but he kills the milkman. I thought he was listening to the theme from this movie on his headphones, but Steve pointed out it's like another James Bond
I
theme,
think
which
it is.
is
It just has
hilarious
the
to
like
me.
wah, wah, and like it has like a very James. He's listening to James Bond music in a James Bond movie.
Because he pretends to be a runner when he goes by this milkman, and then because he puts an American accent on. The thing with this, what's his name? His character's name? Like,
Necros.
Necros. He apparently can just like do any accent or voice. Is this, like,
Listen,
one
it's
of
not
his-
that hard to do accents, okay?
No, yeah, he's like you, right? So he's just jumping around, and then he likes to kill people with his headphone cord. That's his other
Yeah.
like.
It's probably some sort of KGB reinforced headphone cord, I assume. So it's got some
Absolutely,
sort of
it has
wire
to
in
be.
it. But
But every
I kinda
Bond,
like
like,
that. I like
villain
the
guy
idea. I like the idea
Has
of
to
him
have a
switching.
thing.
I like the idea of him switching his accent up when he has to, like when he pulls up to the secret base or whatever, and he's like, "Hello, mate. How the fuck are you? Oh, sorry, the other guy's got the flu."
Regular milkman's got the flu. He's like, let me bat you down. Literally, do you know you have explosive milk in the truck?
Yeah. The guy takes a sip. He's like, tastes a bit explosive. It does.
His head explodes. Did you guys clock the antenna that was a rake? He puts the rake in the ground.
Clock it. It's like in the foreground of the shot. It's the whole fucking shot. If you didn't see that, then you weren't watching the movie.
Exactly. The assassin makes it through as the milkman at this point, and
it rules, I think, is what your notes is supposed to say. It's the best.
Well,
fucking
this
shit.
guy
This
they
whole
saved
movie.
is talking Cold War stuff. Kozkov is talking about Cold War stuff. There's the Cold War sentiment is definitely very prominent during this whole thing,
Well, the
because
Cold
we are
War was still
smack
kinda
dab in the
happening,
middle of
right?
it.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely happening. I don't think the fall of the Berlin Wall has even happened at this point in history.
87?
right? That's 89, isn't it?
I think it's
Is
like,
it?
yeah, it's not till 89, and like the Soviet Union doesn't fall till 91 or
Right.
like almost 92. So,
So
yeah,
the
this
Russians
was
were
right-
still very much 80s bad guys villains at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also they are talking very much about like they're kind of at the end of it, and nuclear
The nuclear
issues.
option.
A
Yeah.
nuclear option is going to be potential.
And then we got to the 90s, they're like, Koreans? And then we got to 2001, they're like, Middle East. Let's just
So it's back to the Middle East, and now
Well,
they're
this
like
movie, the Middle East
everybody
are the
who
good
isn't.
guys. They're good guys in that.
Right, because at this time they liked Afghanistan because they were helping them
lot,
fight the
yeah.
Russians. They
Yeah.
all Bin Laden's
They haven't-
buddy.
They haven't carpet bombed them repeatedly yet at this point in history.
No, 9/11 has not happened. So it's
9/11 wouldn't happen for
Or
another
even the
12
Gulf
years.
or even the Gulf War hasn't started.
right.
up,
The Gulf
flared
War hasn't
up
happened yet. So
Yeah.
much hasn't happened at this stage, So like, because we're doing our Star Trek: The Next Generation review last night, and it's like an episode from 1988, like a year after this,
Right.
and we're like, oh yeah, Goodfellas hasn't happened yet. Oh yeah, this hasn't happened. And, and Whoopi Goldberg's in the episode, and she hadn't done Ghost yet, right? So we're just like, you have to like put yourself back in the time, right, and try to keep it all
I always
straight.
forget that, like, yeah, Next Gen started in 87 or 88.
87, the same year as this.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about. Because, like, Next Gen was just a thing that always existed in my life, and it's because it like came out as I came out. I came out the same year as The Living Daylights.
I was 4 at this point,
Yeah.
so I'm slightly older,
but
Yeah, I was 3. Yeah.
I want to talk a lot about this fucking milkman assassination scene. It's so
Okay, so
damn
Yes.
good.
let me set the scene.
It's a
fight
video
between, great fight between the assassin and one of the agents. The milk is bombs. He's whipping these.
Why don't we
milk-
just talk about it? Why don't
no,
we
but
have to,
we have to go
all-
back for a second because there's the scene where he goes in as the milkman, he kills the cook, right? And
Yeah.
then there's this security guy who comes in, right? And he goes, "Hey, green for the base," and then they get into this like intense
Yeah,
fist
it's-
fight.
And I'm like,
right?
way to go, random agent, to actually have like enough agency to fight him well. You know, like
yeah,
he's-
like he
he's put-
throws a pot of boiling water at him and he ducks it like
and misses.
He gets his face burnt on this grill. It's incredible. Like this is the best part of the movie, I think, is this fight between these
This
two.
is like in any other James Bond movie, this would be James Bond fighting this guy. This is just some random security agent in this building who is doing an excellent job of fighting Agent 47, basically, from the Hitman.
But
video
all he had to do was, hey, green for the base, intruder alert, right? But he
Yeah.
doesn't get it. He doesn't get it
Doesn't
off.
get
so
it
they
out,
can,
yeah.
they're like, what's up? What's up with green for? Is
And
there a
he's making,
problem?
like tea or some shit. Like,
And so finally, Necros kills him, and then like he's like, "Hey, green 4 here. There's a gas leak. Everyone get out." You know, and
super
he's-
crazy, and he's like shaking a thing of milk. It's gonna fucking blow. But when I want to, not to bring it back to Agent 47 over and over again, but like he's putting the cook into like a cold freeze chest. You know those like big freezer chests. He's
Yes.
putting the guy's body in there when the other dude.
Just when that guy comes in,
yeah,
right?
he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
fuck. Yeah. I love it's so funny because like in the Hitman games, you do this all the time, and this exact thing happens all the time. This is just a sequence of something that you would easily take this guy out, but sometimes you do have to get into a fist fight and knock them out before they get to their radio.
Yeah, I guess also like it kind of establishes that Necros is maybe like a very formidable opponent for Bond himself, right? In this whole thing. So.
And we don't really get like an actual good fight between the two of them. Not as good as this. This is
not as good as this. No, they end up
fighting.
fighting like on the plane at the end, and he kicks him. He cuts his bootstraps and whatever. But anyway, sorry, Jason. I know you want to get to the next stage, but
Pick yourself up by the bootstraps, my guy.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like maybe that's like some sort of weird metaphor for like you're trapped by your bootstraps. You have to cut them off to
Cut
free
your
yourself
bootstraps off and
from Soviet Russia.
Kill the ultimate villain and also all the opium just flies all over the countryside. No, I wasn't. I actually wanted you. I'm glad that you guys explained what happens in that fight sequence because it was awesome. The fight I love fight choreography. I'm a wrestling fan, and also anytime an action film shows that and it's long, I love that. I think that just to editorialize a little bit, I think that action movies now, are missing out on the fundamental end final boss battle. They don't do them for as long as they used to, like through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now it's like a bunch of stuff happens and there's a bunch of moving parts, and then the hero always just like kills the villain. And I think that the fight scenes throughout this whole movie exemplify the need to show that you need to have that that chaos, that back and forth sort of fight that needs to happen. And this first fight, this is one of the first like hand-to-hand combat fights that happens in the movie, and it's awesome. It blew my mind that he throws the hot water. In any other movie, the guy would get hit by the hot water, but he dodges it.
he dodges it. Yeah,
This guy and he looks like he's in his like middling to late 40s too. The guy
Yeah.
was security
got
guard.
older. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
he's
like,
just
I was like, this was he like in the like he was like a 00 candidate maybe, and
this
like,
guy
didn't
must
quite
be
make it?
003. Like I'm telling you, this guy rules.
Right.
But no, he's just some guy, and you know he gets knocked out in sort of like a regular way.
He hits him with like a cast iron pan.
yeah, like a
across,
frying
across
pan
the
to the
face.
face.
Clong.
But yeah, he gets tortured in the fight too. Like he gets his face burnt, like you were saying. And he's lying on the grill for a long time. He almost gets like electric knifed.
Yeah, there's like an electric knife thing, and you're
He's
just
trying to
like,
he's trying to pull out the plug
He
with
does.
his foot
He pulls it out
too,
with his
which is
foot because
awesome.
he's like fighting
Yeah.
a guy, and he's also like, this thing's plugged in. I can get this thing unplugged, and then it's fucking useless.
and just
And
how
he does.
deadly kitchens can be, and all the
Yeah.
stuff that's there. That
In a
can kill
fight,
you.
if you have to fight somebody, a kitchen to the death, a kitchen is a good spot. It's a good
so
spot.
much
Well,
ammo
that-
for your opponent.
Yeah.
That Flash movie sucked, but
Your
there's a
kitchen.
great
How about that? They don't know where everything is. You know where it all is.
Was there a fight in the kitchen?
That Flash movie from a couple years ago sucked, but it does have a great fight scene in the kitchen where Bruce Wayne just like bodies the Flash. So I was thinking about that during this as well. The Milkman assassin is now a doctor, apparently. The
there's a
villains
whole-
love
First, he runs-
disguising their villainous nature with hospital stuff.
It's because no one questions a doctor or a paramedic. If you're wearing either of those things in an emergency situation, you will get through to anything that you need to get through to.
Right.
But before that happens, he's running through the house throwing his milk bottles, and they are blowing up, and they're blowing up in a spectacular fashion. Like it's
But because he called as the other guy and he said there's a gas leak, they all think it's just a gas
the
leak
house is just
explosion.
blowing up. Yeah.
Like everything had to really fall in place for Necros. If that guy, instead of like trying to fight him, just runs the other way and tells, then his
He's
whole
fucked.
plan falls
Yeah.
apart. It seems like.
But he knows how the British are. They're prideful. The guy has
No,
to fight.
He'll try to fight me, and I'll hit him with a frying pan, and then I'll do this, right? So
He's like, I've scanned the room. I know there's boiling water happening. There's bacon. There's gonna be boiling bacon strapped to this guy's face. But like, I know, like, I keep saying it, but like when he throws the bottles, the way they explode is just like extremely satisfying. I don't know what it is about this in particular, and like my imagination is going a little bit crazy as well, being like, is it like nitroglycerin in there? Like how are they exploding? He must have added something to it that I wasn't really.
But
like,
it also
privy
kind of
to,
reminds me of a
whatever.
Molotov cocktail in a way. Like you think it's just gonna like hit and burn, but it hits and full explosion.
It's got to be like nitroglycerin or something. That's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like he didn't plan to go in there with the milkman outfit. He used it as a moment of opportunity, but he must have had other devices with him to be like, I can spike this milk with this liquid.
Okay, I see what you're
know?
saying, and that's a really good point because he did just like infiltrate. He didn't.
Yeah. He didn't
show up as the milkman.
He didn't show up as the milkman, so he must have added something to the milk to make it.
But he
blow
killed
up
the
like that.
milkman deliberately to take his place, didn't he?
Yeah, but he did. But like, did he know he was going to do that? I don't know. Or was it just?
I
Like,
think that part he
circumstances?
knew, but like I think that the fight wasn't necessary. Like the fight with the security guard wasn't.
That's the
necessarily
unplanned
planned.
part. But
That
yeah,
seems, but that fact that he was able to like then make this like ruse of the gas leak, which seems like another crucial part of his plan to get.
yeah, maybe he was just gonna. Maybe his plan was like, I'll get in and I'll take a guard uniform and then I'll start blowing shit up, and I'll get the guy out. But also, the guy that he's getting is part of the plan too. He knows that this is gonna happen, right? We don't know that he knows, but he knows he's getting taken out as well.
Yeah, Yorgi knows that he's going to get extracted here. And that was my other
Koskov
question.
gets kidnapped again at this point.
Because Yorgi gets hit, like eventually Necros hits Yorgi in like the face with a gun, right, in order to get him out.
Yeah,
And he, but like, did he really hit him or did he only fake hit him?
he nerf hit. Yeah, he pulled his punch. He did a super kick hit with a pistol.
Yeah, he super pistoled him. Then we get we have a scene where Bond we get to meet M. Bond's name is on their list, and also Bond has to reiterate why he didn't shoot the girl. He sort of has to defend himself, and then he gets another termination order to go out and just wreak havoc. I feel like James Bond has a license to kill, doesn't want to kill necessarily, but when push comes to shove, he's going to have to do it and will do it. But I feel like James Bond, he's good. He doesn't want to go out and kill, But in this, it's very real for him because he has to be like, M is like, why didn't you take the shot? And he's like, well, I don't really know what to tell you other than like, I wanted some of it.
I don't think we ever get like a full answer to that question.
No, he gives an answer to the middle management guy back in Prague or whatever.
But I mean, that answer is like, people keep asking him throughout. We get that answer that she didn't know the end from. She's
That's
like, I
a good
suspected
point.
she wasn't a real assassin. But
and then he doesn't
I've always
kill
speculated why.
non-combatants, right? He identified her as not as more of a civilian, right?
Yeah.
And that was playing a part. I think he was
a good
correct
point,
not to
too.
shoot her because she wasn't a real sniper.
Right.
it's true, yeah.
And
Which we
so-
will find out very soon. She was even using blanks, so it was all part of the ruse. But she's like not part of the ruse. She is just like a pawn in this whole game. We get more Q stuff, a new car, and I wrote a gas mask, but that's not one of it. One of the things.
And then he gets his key clicker.
They put the
thing.
gas mask on because the keychain has a very interesting skill. It has stun gas that comes out of it that can knock a person out for 30 seconds, which will come into play later. But also, this and the fact that this keychain can explode can be activated by whistling, which amazing. What a hilarious thing.
Was this like the first, like, or I'm sure it's not the very first, but it seems like an early example of product placement because it's got the Philips logo on the little key finder thing.
I did notice that, yeah.
James Bond.
The radio has it later too. When the radio
No, it's not
is...
the first because in the movie Dr. No, which we did last week, the very first James Bond movie, there's a literal moment where he has a fight scene in a room that is just full of red stripe ear
Red
cases
stripe,
everywhere.
Yeah.
That's like red stripe just branding the whole fucking room.
Is
So
it
it's not
Jamaica?
it was in Jamaica, yeah. It was filmed in Jamaica, and Red Stripe was like, yeah, you will be in your movie.
Sure.
So they probably financed like half.
We
the
love
island
product
shot.
placement.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that we're
and
going
I've-
to be
We've talked about
taking
this in the
that stuff
podcast
out a
before.
lot.
I do not. Egregious product placement where like people talk about a product in a movie. That's where I draw the line. But if things are just in a movie, it doesn't really bother me because I'm like, listen, man, things are in our everyday lives already. It makes the movie seem a little bit more believable to me if there's like an actual product in there rather than a fake made up one.
That swayed me a little bit more towards what you're like towards that, but I still think it's interesting to see the products that are used. Because they're very it's of the time. Philips was a very prominent technology at the creator at the time, which was interesting to see a radio have the Philips logo. A radio in a car, a very expensive a car
Digital
that
radio too. You could like digitally go to the like, instead of like
like it had the seat. It was just it was. He said it was a police band, but it's really that thing when you're in a car and you hit the seek button and it just
Yeah.
hits the next radio.
that was like
station.
that's that in the 80s that was big.
That's bleeding edge technology.
Those are the radios people would steal. When people are like,
Yeah.
they stole my car radio. They're talking about
Right.
this thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
This thing also, it's keys for a car. Apparently, it's got a key that can open up 90% of the world's locks. I don't remember now thinking about it if there was ever a time when he used it for that.
He uses it to get the handcuffs off later.
Oh, okay.
He says, try the little one or something like that.
But the way that they like focus in on it, it seems like that's going to be a huge crux of a plot point later.
I forgot about that until you just mentioned it.
It should be like, oh, these are the 10% of locks it doesn't open.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'd think he would be like, damn, this must be one of the 10% of the locks in the world that it
It's the
can.
weirdest
unlock.
red herring ever.
Yeah. But also,
Also-
the knockout gas didn't even fucking work really on the guys that got. They're like, ugh, and
Well-
they like go on their knee for a second, and then they get up and they're like, we're not out of this.
Q
yet."
very specifically says it only works for 30 seconds. It's
But
literally
that's
like
crazy. What kind of gas
Yeah.
is this that knocks you out for 30 seconds? Also,
Well-
it makes him very horny, 007.
it's ecstasy. Doubles. Also, we get to see a great couch that will eat a person. Where did that person go? That the couch ate?
He died.
Yeah, and then Q sits on the couch. So like, what happened to your boy? Like, what's going on here?
I never
I don't know what you're talking about.
Gone forever. What are you talking about? There's like cut to like a weird pneumatic tube. He's getting launched into like another continent.
Yeah, the sequences with Q, I think, are the most consistent thing throughout all the James Bond movies I've ever
Yeah.
seen. You know, until the original actor died, and then they got even the younger actor they have now. He's kind of got the same energy, but
Yeah. He has more of a like an actual role throughout the movie. Like most of these movies, Q is just there to be like, here's your no gadgets, and then he's gone.
And I'm grumpy,
Yeah.
and I, 007, you're always ruining the stuff I give you.
It's got just had a new paint job, 007. Fuck!
He literally says there's a new paint job and this car is also bleeding edge technology, and Bond fucking we'll get to it here in a minute, but he just uses that as a weapon to escape and blows the car up on his on his
that is
own.
a James Bond cliche as well at this point. Like James Bond is just a cliche in its own right? Like they have like sort of a checklist of things that they do. Especially we're at the 15th movie in this movie, right? So that checklist is long at this point where they're like, we got to hit all the beats that people love. They love fucking lasers, they love moonrakers, they love Jawses and odd jobs. We got to have all this shit.
Where's a lot of vagina?
Okay, so we've got a henchman, but he just looks like an Aryan asshole. What do we do? He's got to have something else. How about he changes his accent all the time and strangles people with his headphones? You know
Yeah,
what?
and he's called
It's the 80s.
Necros.
Perfect.
Yes, yes.
Is he
it'll be
Greek?
memorable.
Who knows?
Because they had done like characters like Jaws, right, and
Yeah.
and whatever, and like that the Bond is always running into these. Circus
I mean, there's
clowns,
Baron
I guess.
Samedi who is
Yeah, these like
zombie.
villains. Yeah, Baron Samedi, who is
He's like a witch doctor,
a voodoo
like,
man.
can't die,
Yeah.
like, he comes back to life and shit. Where it's like magic is in James Bond. Give me more magical James Bond stuff. The next James Bond, whoever it is, they gotta have some magic going on in there. Maybe he's like-
I'm there for it. Where he's like,
James
almost like
Bond's-
Indiana Jones, right? Because he was. dealing
Well,
with
James
all the-
Bond should
Right,
meet
here's
Indy
the-
at some point.
Here's the trailer. and the planchette moves up to 0, 0, 7. No,
There for it. Yeah, sure.
Moneypenny tells Bond.
I realized as
who-
I did that, I'm like, wait, 0. Does it have to move away from the 0? Like,
like,
back to the 0.
were you talking about the board game for kids?
What? The Ouija board or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, were you talking about Ouija?
Luigi.
Your mic went out for a quick second. You had the like underwater thing, but when it went
Oh.
bring, I couldn't.
Yeah, I was talking about the Ouija board and how it would summon 007's ghost or whatever. I don't know what I was inferring, but I was inferring that there would be magic in the next 007 movie.
But it's the Ouija board. That's amazing.
Luigi board?
Luigi board. Amica. Moneypenny tells Bond who Kara is. She's got like a kind of a Russian-y last name that I can't remember. Do you guys recall what her last name is?
Oh, I barely remembered her first name, and it's the same as my ex-wife. So
Oh no!
But she pronounces this Kara. My ex-wife
Kara,
Kara, but spelled the same way.
Moneypenny tells Bond who she is, and Bond heads to meet her. He stays incognito, and he gets taken by the KGB. And he also sees his mark at this point. Bond, of course, grabs her case. He investigates it, finds the rifle. It's got a bullet hole in it from when he shot at her. And Kara Milovoy.
Right.
Milovi.
She returns to her home. It's been tossed by the KGB. Bond shows up, tells her, "Oh, this place has been tossed by the KGB." And
How would you know?
did you guys?
How would you know?
Did you guys clock James Bond's jacket? The only reason I wouldn't have mentioned it otherwise, his leather coat, it might be the most 80s leather jacket I've ever seen in my life. It's one of those like kind of puffy, like
Yeah, it's his winter jacket. Keeps him
Because
warm
he's-
while he's on his 00 missions.
No, I didn't notice the jacket too much. I was mostly just confused by her Kara as a character is confusing. Like she's sometimes smart, but most of the time she's dumb.
She doesn't really need to be in the movie at all. Like she doesn't.
But like James Bond he's not even pretending not to be from England, right? They are in Czechoslovakia. So like, why are you here? And he acts like he tells her Yorgi's defection was fake.
Yeah.
Right. So and she doesn't act surprised. So I guess she knows that. And
Well, she's the boy, the partner of his. So she probably has some sort of information that she's not sharing. But like again, her character is so underwritten and kind of poorly performed that I'm like, what? James Bond is just horny for this woman.
this is the point of the movie, though, where in my notes I'm actively trying to work out what's happening. So I kind of go like, she's stoked about Kozkev or Gorgi. I guess it's a ruse to make it seem like he was defecting, which I guess he was. She needs her cello. Oh, we get to the point where they're trying to escape now. And they also do that thing where when they're escaping the place, they create the distraction of the cello case with like the hat on it.
yes.
And they get out of there. We also did. Oh,
they make for up after this, like this meeting, they make it a very big point throughout to take care of the cello. Like they constantly like, make sure you're careful with it.
right
be
to the
careful with
end,
cello.
and it has a bullet hole in it when we see it at the very end, but it doesn't have any.
Well, it gets shot
meaning.
during the chase. But yeah, you
Yeah.
would think that it would have some sort of importance to the rest of the narrative, but it doesn't.
All I
just
could
because
think-
it just means a lot to her.
Nope.
But like also it shouldn't, because the asshole character that we hate bought it for her, so she should want to destroy it. But it is a Stradivarius. They all have.
Why does James
With the Stradivarius
Bond
element, yeah.
give in to her? Because like they do the distraction. He's like, we maybe have 10 minutes. She's like, no, we are going back for my cello. And then it cuts and he's like, okay.
Cut to okay. Well,
Yeah.
we got the
I
cello.
guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So
They
like,
get
I'm
it.
like,
Like it's a Stradivarius, and he's like, oh shit.
because he's like, I'll get you a new one when we get to Austria or whatever, and she's excited to go there, but she won't go without it. And then he's like, makes the joke, he's like, you couldn't have learned the violin, which would fit better into his car or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is great.
But like, I guess that like, it just established that Bond is got like he's not fully fixated on the mission. The relationship is more important to him than the mission. Or
Going to be a theme for this whole month and for James Bond in general. He's always he's focused on the mission, but he might be a little distracted by the Bond girl.
is this consistent with the like Roger Moore James Bonds and the Sean Connery James Bonds? Would they have done the same kind of thing?
That's a good question.
No, Sean Connery. No, Sean Connery will make sure that you're okay. But if it came down to a cello, Sean Connery would be like, "Shut up!" and throw you over his shoulder and take you out.
Yeah.
These
You're trying to get them the
cavemen,
last
James
word,
Bond.
and then they don't. Okay, so maybe that's why they hate Dalton, is because he gave in for this cello.
Yeah, because he's a cuck. Yeah, he's a beta or whatever. He's a soy blonde.
Yeah. Sean Connery never
blonde.
would have done that. He would have slapped her around. Or
Oh,
whatever, but-
is the T-shirt soy bond? Is that it? Is?
I'm gonna write that
Did we
down.
find it? Soy bond.
Soy bond. That might be a tough sell. The whole crux of this scene is literally like he meets her. She kind of explains like, but no, I'm the boyfriend, and but we learn that he's pretending to be the friend of Kozlov, which I didn't clock until he says it later when they get to the fair. But that is what's happening here. He's just sort of like, I'm your boyfriend's friend. I've come here to take you away. Which
they've
is
been through a lot together. Yeah, like it's
which is insane at this point because they get into a literal spy situation. And as they're driving out of town, they hear that a man with brown hair and a woman with blonde hair are driving away and they're wanted.
with a cello. It's
Yeah,
like
they've got a cello with him. Yeah, and then he
And the
uses his
police-
car lasers to.
The police drive by them, but before the lasers, even the police drive by them and are like, "That's them." And then Bond is like, "Check this out," and he lasers off the bottom of the car, and then he's like, the salt in this area is real bad."
salt
He says-
corrosion.
he
The
says-
salt corrosion.
Well, she
But then-
says, "What was that?" And he goes,
Because he cuts off that car, and then I'm like, okay, that's how they get away. But then like they're pursued by like 100 more like squad cars. So the whole thing with the lasering it off was just for spectacle.
"Oh yeah,
It's not.
that's just to have the checklist be checked." You know, I'm
Exactly.
telling you.
And this whole sequence escalates in such a hilarious way. It goes from like a couple of police to a roadblock that he blows up. And then they go out onto the ice and it's an ice lake. They're getting shot out. Of course, the wheel gets shot out. Of course, the wheel has like ice, like it's got a blade on it. He circles around these officers, sinks them. They're dead, right? They're frozen in a horrible tundra.
Now they're
And
Russian. They've got lots.
Then
of
he hits the
vodka
rocket
in their system to.
Well, they're Czech
Ice with the
actually.
Sherlock.
But
Oh,
Rich,
sure.
yeah, that's a good point. He hits the rocket booster, and then they make it out of that situation. That's when they get out of the car. The car gets blown up because I think Bond uses as a decoy. Then they get on the cello case, ride the cello case down a mountain. This whole sequence was the first time in about 20 minutes. Like I'm just watching this movie like this, and then I go,
What's happening? You're like, wait a minute. I thought this was supposed to be like the gritty James Bond that everybody said was too dark. And he's
No,
like,
it's goofy,
salt
goofy.
corrosion.
riding down a hill, riding down a hill in a cello case.
yeah, I
Blasting
wouldn't say he's
through-
too dark.
In line with every other James Bond movie I've ever seen. If anything, the Pierce Bronson ones are the dark, gritty reboots comparatively.
Yeah.
They don't have
so
anything too goofy.
It's only gotten darker since Dalton took over. He's the Mandela or whatever, that the Mandela effect. It changed everything.
And they cross the border into Vienna. They have been talking about going to Vienna for the last little bit too. And as they cross the border, nothing to declare, only this cello, and he holds the cello up, which I thought was great.
He also tells her, like, make sure you show them this. Like, he pulls her passport out and she's like, "Ooh," like waving it at the. It's funny. It is funny, but it's also insane that they just keep going. Like they're like they like go into the horizon and then over the hill and they're gone.
And the like cinematography for the way Vienna looks as they comically slide into it, I thought was really cool looking. It had it was probably just a matte painting or like some sort of composite.
I think it was. It looks.
So I'm going to ask my stepmother. If you had to get into Austria, was it by cello sled or by pneumatic tube?
Yeah. And was it okay for you to just wave your passport aggressively in the air as you zipped by?
Yeah. How did it go exactly in those days? What was
I'm
what was the most
going to,
common method?
I'm going to
Well,
Chicago.
sit
in
down. I have a
April.
long story to tell you. It's about 2 hours.
I'm going to Chicago in April by train, and I'm just going to wave my passport at the American border border guys. I think it'll go fine. For
That's
me.
how you end up in the Gulf of America.
That's how you end up at Guantanamo Bay with 30.
Montego Bay.
Yeah.
Where they put all the Al Qaedas.
Okay, don't get political. Over to Tangiers.
I was just quoting The Office.
No, I wasn't.
Remind me.
I wasn't saying that to you. I was saying that to myself because I was about
Oh.
to. I was about to.
You were like,
yeah. Yes. I was like that. Over to Tangiers. I don't know. Why do they? It's Tangier. Why do they always pronounce it Tangiers? What's the deal?
I think Americans pronounce it Tangiers.
Could
I think
be.
there is an S on the end, right? Like, or no?
No, it's Tangier.
Oh, is it because there's like casino called Tangiers?
Could be.
Because
I
isn't
think
that
you guys
what-
are thinking about those little tiny oranges that are mostly eaten in winter months.
At Christmas time, tangerines.
Tangiers is a city in northwestern Morocco. Tangiers.
Why is it Tangiers plural? Is it just like
There's a
one of those
band,
things?
a Canadian indie rock band called Tangiers, but they're
that's what they were referencing?
Yeah. That's what the 1987 movie The Living Daylights was referencing.
So in Tangier, now they've been referencing this Russian guy played by Gimli.
Gimli,
shows up.
not Sala? That's
He
another
shows-
interesting thing. John Rhys Davies is like a character actor who's been around for all of our lives.
Mhm.
And he's been in some of the biggest, most influential things that have ever existed in terms of pop culture. And I guarantee you, The Living Daylights is not one of them. When people are like, you know, the guy from The Living Daylights, like no one ever says that about John Rhys Davies' career.
He's
But
the
he
guy
still
from
has the
sliders.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say some people say sliders.
He still
Some
has his
people say-
finger. He still has his fingerprints on a James Bond movie, though. Like it's.
Oh
still-
yeah, that's not to say that he's bad in this movie at all. It's just to say that like when you think of John Rhys Davies, you typically think either Indiana Jones or Lord of the Rings, and then there is the outlying person who's like sliders. Remember
Sliders.
sliders? Where he's like, we have to go to another dimension. We have to slide to another dimension.
Oh, is he the guy? He's like the Sherpa in Sliders. I haven't seen that show since Sliders was
He's
on
not
television.
a Sherpa. He's like a professor of fucking like.
No,
He's
I
like
know
an
he's not literally a
astrophysicist or
Sherpa,
something.
but he's the guy
Oh.
that's like, this is how sliding works.
Yeah, because he says it like this. What the hell is sliding? I hate
They're supposed to
being trapped
reboot
in
that
these other
show.
alternate dimensions with you fucking idiots. Speak about like multiverses. That whole show is just multiverses.
That's
But
all it
every
was,
episode
yeah.
they
It was
slide to another dimension.
Exactly.
How come it never crossed over with the Scott Bakula one? That's the same idea.
They were working
What's
after
that show called again?
Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Quantum sliding.
Quantum
Stay
Leap
tuned
is-
for our new.
Well, there is that
United
one
Focus
episode
podcast
of,
show where we.
There's that one episode of Sliders where they show up in a dimension and every single person is Scott Bakula. It's like a John Malkovich universe, except they're all Scott Bakulas, and he's like, "What the hell is happening here?"
I missed that one.
What's this guy's name? It's like Potemkin or something like that. I wrote it somewhere.
Who John
Oh,
Rhys
shit.
Davies' character?
Yeah.
It is
General
Pushkin.
Leonid Pushkin.
Pushkin. Yeah. So Pushkin meets up with the American guy Brad Whitaker or something like that.
Yeah.
And this Brad Whitaker guy is the worst. He's Donald Trump in 3 years from now. Basically, he's a warmonger. In his like mansion, he's got a hallway of like the worst warmongers in history, including Hitler and
Napoleon.
Napoleon,
Genghis
Stalin.
Khan, yeah.
Genghis Khan was there.
Genghis
and-
Khan was there. I think Jack the Ripper was there. Einstein.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, he's the guy from GoldenEye that plays the CIA guy. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well, he was in this too, but no.
Oh.
Yeah, this was what we were
Oh,
talking
but
about
it's
earlier.
a different.
It's a
okay.
different character he's
Yeah.
playing.
Because I'm less familiar with these movies as well, I was like, oh, there's going to be a moment where he like reveals that he's actually a secret CIA government agent who's like
Yeah.
just doing this. And even when John Rhys Davies' characters is like, we can see that your funds are in a Swiss bank account and they haven't been touched in weeks or whatever. And he's like, well, hold your horses. And I'm like, okay, well, this guy is clearly going to be like, he's working for the CIA and the American government, and Bond is his friend, because as we know from the Brosnan movies, he's Bond's friend. No, they just decided to cast the same fucking actor. They couldn't find another guy with a southern twang to like be Bond's CIA buddy.
It might have been that they wanted to have like a little bit of an Easter egg, though.
I think it's called
Been a
nepotism.
little.
He's probably friends with one of
Just-
the directors or writers, or and they just let him do
Like
it. Again.
this guy, he plays like always a CIA guy, not just in James Bond movies, but in other things.
In
too.
everything,
Like,
yeah. And like I kind of like his character in this movie. I think
I like this villain.
when he's
a
on
lot,
screen, I'm
actually.
kind of like
the worst
vibing.
American.
Yeah, I'm like vibing with what's going on. I like his presence, and I kind of like his sort of like gooberness. Like he seems like he's like, oh, he's smart, but he's also kind of dumb, which I appreciate in a character, because I'm like, that's how I feel sometimes. I'm smart, but I'm also kind of dumb.
And he's like later in the movie when his final battle, he's got all this weird bleeding edge technology for like outfitting your office to be a war zone.
Yeah, but I do like the the idea of being like, come on now, let me show you my war room, and he goes in and he's like, bleep bleep, and all these like secret drawers are opening from his weird Warhammer like Civil War Warhammer collection or whatever.
Which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, and he's like, this is a gun that shoots fucking pellets instead of bullets, and they burrow into your head and plant worms in there. Like, fuck, all my technology is crazy. And yeah, again, he's talking about how it's the latest technology from America, which, as we all know, America makes the best weapons of war. I guess I don't fucking know what the movie's about. I think that was the perception at the time. I don't know if that's still true, but
they make a lot of bombs and weapons. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
America loves guns.
We'll
Too much,
cover
some
the-
would say.
We'll cover that actual scene in a little bit, but this whole sequence is basically just Pushkin. We still think he's a villain at this point, but Pushkin is actually, as it turns out, spoilers, it's fine. He's like the KGB insider for the MI6.
Yeah, he's like the Valentine character from the Brosnan movies, where he's just sort of like, okay, Bond, we can be friends, maybe.
Right.
In 2 movies, we kiss. Like, what?
Unlikely allies, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the movies, we goes. I like that. That's funny. Bond and Kara are now in Vienna. Bond always gets so familiar so fast. He's a horn dog. I noticed that Bond will always put down the mission to get real close to the Bond girl, and it's definitely happening here. Some of the cinematography here, and that's what's happened towards the end of the chase and into Vienna, I thought was interesting. You get the sense that you get a real sense of what it's like to be there, especially this Vienna scene, and later in Afghanistan is a good element of that, where they really spared no expense to take you to that place. It doesn't feel cheap ever. This movie specifically, and I think the Bronson movies do it well. Those are really the ones that I have the most experience with. I would imagine the Daniel Craig ones take that over the top because they're modern movies. They can pretty much just show you whatever they want to show you nowadays. But this movie does a really good job at that. And he says this shaken not stirred line during this segment. I think when they're going to like the hotel or whatever, he's a shaken not stirred. Anything to note about this? We're getting to the sequence with the fair. We're coming up on that soon.
Oh, that's the worst part of the movie. But, like, I'm like, what is happening here? And
I think the hotel thing is like, I don't know. It doesn't really serve much of a purpose to me, again, other than for him to be like, I'm charming. And you're like, yeah, we know that James Bond is fucking charming. We don't have to have a moment where he's like, would you like me to buy that dress for you on the house? Like, the house of what? He's like, we'll charge it to the government or whatever. Or no, he charges it
and
to,
this is
her boyfriend. He's like, we'll charge it to your fucking boyfriend.
This is where the movie muddied up for me a little bit as far as what, like, who the good guys and bad guys are, because we get that great scene with Whitaker and Pushkin where it's like, oh wait, it's Pushkin, because early in the movie they show a picture like this is the mark, but now it's like Pushkin is like, when Whitaker says they're talking about all the statues, Pushkin calls them butchers, and Whitaker calls them surgeons cutting off the dead flesh. And I was like, oh, I see what's happening here. We're getting a little bit of a misdirect. And I sort of made a note about like, oh, what's going on? But then we go to the opera. Bond and Kara take that, their new dress to the opera. And we meet that informant, that middle manager again from the
His
beginning.
name is Saunders. He's just
Saunders.
He's a pencil pushing MI6 agent who's just like there to chastise Bond, but also be
But
like.
he does get a cool like code name or something. He's just
He doesn't really. Does he have one? I don't think he does.
Yeah.
He just
Doesn't
calls him
seem like he
Saunders.
does.
He's not a 00 or anything. He's just some.
And he's not
fucking
like
guy.
M or like a letter.
No, yeah.
or-
Unless Saunders is like, we give Saunders the code name Saunders to people who are fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the Toby Flenderson of MI6.
Yeah.
That's an Office reference if you don't know what I'm talking about. So Bond sort of explains that the blanks were supposed to cause a diversion, but Koskov is not good. He's instead bad. MI6 were supposed to think that, but Bond is posing as Koskov's friend to get that info. Saunders is pissed and doesn't believe a word he's saying. He's like, what are you talking about? Koskov is the VIP who we have to save again. Pushkin is the bad guy, and everything you're saying
But
is
Bond
crazy.
is like, there's more to this. It's like there has to be more to
Exactly.
this. And like Bond is the smart guy, but we also have already now got a scene where like we've already seen the moment where Koskov is swimming next to the assassin and Whitaker's there, and like we've already had that moment because I think it cuts as soon as she's like, who's going to pay for the dress? It like cuts to that pool sequence, and that's when I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. But then it actually is detrimental to the rest of the movie for me because I'm like, I already know more than MI6, and I feel smarter than the movie at that point. I sometimes I bring up Lost, and like in like the later seasons of Lost where nobody knows anything about the magical aspect of the island except for John Locke. So like you're going through John Locke's story and you're learning all this shit about the island, and then every other character is like, you're crazy, John Locke. But really, as the audience, we're all like, everybody shut up and listen to John Locke. So you just kind of hate everybody except John Locke.
I love how you brought up Lost too, because John Terry shows up in this movie as the CIA guy who played Christian Shepherd, like Jack's father.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's why I recognized him.
He's
But
way
like
younger here, but
20 years younger. That's crazy. That's a good call out actually. Awesome.
I didn't even put that together, even though I was thinking about Lost while watching this movie.
Previously on Lost. You're right. Just as a side note to your note about Lost, if they would have just listened to John Locke from the beginning, even when he was like, we thought he was a crazy person, I think things would have gone differently. But
Don't tell me what I can't.
don't tell me what I can't do. I'm in a wheelchair, but I want to go on an Australian walkabout. Yeah. Okay, well, fair enough. Bond and Kara go to the fair. Saunders is also a bad guy. Kind of.
But no,
I thought he gave a knowing look to the kidnapper, and then the reason they kill him is because they don't need him anymore, because he kind of helps. But I didn't really understand what happened here, because
I think that it's just supposed to be more of the death to spies or whatever.
Okay.
they're killing all the spies.
Yeah,
killing all the spies.
Because then he finds the balloon with death to spies on it or whatever, and then remember it says like, yeah, it says
well, the balloon.
And then Bond almost shoots a fucking 6-year-old boy. Like,
after Saunders gets killed by that like elaborate bomb setup from the balloon man who is Necros.
It's not even that. It's like he kills him by making the door crush him, which is it's kind of
oh right,
and, like, wild. He puts a little detonator inside of the hydraulics of the door, I guess. Which I'm like, no door is designed to do this, but this is kind of frightening imagery in my mind. You don't see it happen; you just kind of see his arm.
But you see the blood splatter.
and then you see the door shatter. And then you see Bond kneeling next to the corpse. You don't see the corpse, but behind him, the mirrored wall has been like shattered in this really sort of like disturbing way. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this visual is kind of like hitting me. Like it's making me feel anxious. Just
I
like
felt the same way.
I can
Yeah.
feel the chaos that has occurred here, and I can almost imagine how fucked up the body must look like based only on what's shattered behind him. I don't know. Sometimes there's like images that if I know if I was like 7, I probably would be terrified. I'd be like, are they going to show the body? Like, I think that's what it is. I'm like, if the behind Bond looks that fucked up right now, imagine what the body must look like. It's probably like half severed or whatever. And I think it was really effective. And
But don't worry. After Bond gets that balloon, it floats over to him. He grabs it. He sees the thing and pops it and
Yeah.
rages out. He just
Again,
like
most elaborate assassin of all time. He rigged it so that like a string would like pull a balloon in front of Bond, so he could be like, oh my.
But he then just is like, oh yeah, we got to finish our date though. Kara, come over to this Ferris wheel thing. We're gonna go up to the top. It gets trapped at the top, and he's like, I planned it that way. And then I thought that they had sex, but they come back down and they've just been making out the whole time. Maybe
Wait,
I don't
wasn't
know.
that before the assassination?
No, it's Horn Dog Bond stops the wheel and puts the moves on Koskov's girl. They bang.
Yeah.
Is the next note that I wrote after.
I guess my brain
that.
shuffled it to be like the more logical course of events would be this.
No, that's the crazy part about it. After he
He's like, I know
witnesses this-
one of my friends and longest colleagues has just been sliced in half by a door, but would you like
and he
to
basically
bang?
was like, "Con."
Yeah.
No, he still has to go and make out with the pretty Russian broad, a pretty Czechoslovakian
And
girl.
then they get to the bottom, and everybody in the whole amusement park is there, and they're like, "Do you want to go on the ride again?" They all laugh, and he's like, "No."
Yeah. So they head out to. Oh no, you're absolutely right. I got my notes shuffled. You're
I knew
absolutely
I
right.
was right.
I'm sorry.
Do you not sometimes
Um,
just like think instead of just looking at your notes? Fucking think about the movie you watched.
I was, and I thought that it happened in that order, and I thought it'd be funny if it had have. But you're right.
But logically,
Also,
it makes no sense.
don't say to me. Don't you just think sometimes? Because
Well, it
no,
seems like you were like,
I don't.
These notes must be the law. But I'm like, no, I'm
They-
pretty sure that like it wouldn't make any sense narratively for him to get cut in half and then Bond be like, now let's go fuck on a Ferris wheel. Like, no one would. Ever
I've
do
got
that.
I've got a redaction here. It actually happened this way. It actually had. The reason why I thought it did is because I might have written notes and then wrote notes after the fact. So at any rate, they go up and bang. They come back down and go to a cafe. Saunders gets killed, and then they go to Tangiers.
But not before there's like 10 moments of like jump scares from the amusement park where they're like walking
Yes.
around and like a mummy's like, like, okay.
There was also that scene where Saunders is sitting in the cafe and the balloon guy is like pacing back and forth
Yeah.
outside in the background, which
And
I thought
Bond
was a
is
really
noticing.
interesting choice.
I
Yeah.
also, one thing that this moment in this movie made me realize is how little sort of like fairgrounds and boardwalks have changed since the late 80s. Like if you go to them
Right.
now, it's like the same painted bullshit and like the same animatronic, like it's all still the same stuff. I had the same feeling when I watched the movie Us, and like the whole concept of that movie is they go to this style of boardwalk in the 80s and then they go back and it's almost identical, like very little has changed. And I don't know when the last time you guys have gone to something like this is, but it still looks
Like you mean like the X or something like that?
yeah, I mean the X is our
good
local example, but I
example.
mean like I went to Santa Cruz like a couple of years ago, which I think is where Us was shot, and like and then I saw Us and I was like, wow, it's really like the same. And then you watch something like this and I'm like, I'm it looks like the paint is a little bit more fresh in this movie, but it's the same shit. It's just
Yeah,
been
I
there
went
for
to a
decades.
fair, like a county fair style thing in Phoenix, Arizona. About
Arizona.
That's right. I said it like that on purpose. About 6 or 7 years ago. And the weird thing about the American fair compared to even the X is that you leave a section of the fair and go to another. It's like they've just replicated a section of the fair because they're so massive. like it's kind of like the C&E is very much
Oh, that's like a video game, like where you're like running Roller Coaster Tycoon, and you're like,
yeah, and
I'll
you
just
walk to the
duplicate this area of the park over here, and I'll make more money.
It was so weird because I walked over to like this next section. It just had all the
The
same
same shit.
the same stuff. Yeah, the Americans do it way different than we do because traditionally the regular fares that come here that aren't the C&E, they take over a parking lot. You can see every element of it,
Yeah.
especially back home in Halifax.
And all
The
the
winter
carnies
fair
try
would come.
try to bone your wife or whatever.
Yeah.
But your wife is like, "Can you
That's
protect me?"
universal.
And then you're like, let's get out of here.
That's universal. That's around the world. The carnies are trying to just sleep with your wife. We're introduced to
I mean, it probably works like 90% of the time. It doesn't work. It's like the skeleton key, but in reverse. Like 10% of the time it works.
or it's like It's Always Sunny and then
Yeah.
the
I
carny
was just trying to bring up
stabs you.
the movie. Yeah.
We see the new gadget that I kind of had a problem with earlier in this show, where there's a new gadget that we see are just binoculars, but they're glasses. Now, I don't mean to nitpick, but like, why doesn't he just have a little tiny pair of binoculars? Is it more?
It's just
Is it more
gadget,
obvious? Is he
It's
just gadgets? Just gadget? That's the explanation.
right? Am I right, Dave? Like it's got.
I would say so. Yeah, like they love the gadgets. They want the stuff that Q gives them to matter, I guess. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be cool if it was like he touches a little button, and then like the lenses kind of morph or something, and then he can like zoom in. But in the 80s,
But he literally goes like, and they're just binoculars.
wait, hold on, do that again.
It's like this with them.
Yeah, if you had to do one of these, like two jewelers lens loops.
it was good.
He was not working overtime that day. He was like, I don't know, put some binoculars on some glasses. I'm
He puts them on,
going.
he's like, I can't
lunch.
see anything. He's like, well, they're just fucking magnifying glasses, you pervert.
Right. So we get the sequence now where Bond gets Pushkin in the room. He questions him. Pushkin was going to have him arrested for using state funds, but Bond uses a woman's boobs as a distraction for the security. No, that's
Yes.
not really how it happened, but that is kind of how it happened.
I mean, that's the beginning of the movie, literally.
Yeah. But no, at this point, he like a security guard tries to come in and he's like, naked woman, and the security guard's like, oh.
Yeah, this part
That is what we're led to believe. Like it was earlier with the scene with the woman with her boobs, where she gets the guy to put her, and then like if a man sees a naked woman, he will be stunned. Which
Yeah. It's like, and it's more effective than the actual stun gas that we see later. Like
Much
people
more
are,
effective.
people are more
Lasts a little
effectively knocked out by tits in this movie than they are by the knockout gas from his little gadget that he
James
carries.
Bond just needs to bring around a really attractive woman and just pull her top off.
But he needs to bring like one that's like the first lady, the big Russian lady, and one that's
Yeah.
like, conventionally attractive. Because some people aren't.
What are
gonna-
you into?
Yeah. Which one do you prefer?
That's good. What's your style?
Oh my
Why
goodness.
so serious?
Yeah.
Isn't that
So-
what John Rice Davies says when he walks into the room and the woman's like looking all upset, you know? And then James Bond has got of course the gun pointed at her or whatever.
Yeah. And he says like, you should have brought lilies, or lilies like for funerals, maybe. I don't understand. I didn't understand the.
I think that's what he meant. He was like, "This is your funeral. I'm here to kill you." Which
yeah.
you know, because originally James Bond doesn't want to kill Pushkin because he's like he's not the guy. He's not the one who's behind this. And M's just like, "Well, I'll send 008. He follows orders. He'll do it. He doesn't know Pushkin.
He doesn't know him and he doesn't give a fuck. he loves
also-
killing people.
also during this-
008. So I was gonna say, damn it, I was gonna try to make like the 789 joke, but in the 007 terms, it didn't work out. I got too ahead of myself.
Why was 00? No, okay. Chat, go ahead.
Why are all the other agents scared of 007? Because
Let us know in the comments.
89.
But I thought this was really interesting because James Bond is still in the dark to the whole thing. Like he has his assumptions, but they have this really great moment where he's got the gun to his head, and Pushkin is like, basically like, okay, well, if you think that I'm the villain here, I am. You're gonna have to kill me in order to stop all of this, which is a great setup because cut to like. There's some stuff before this. He meets Felix later in between this, but the next time we see Pushkin, it's that sequence where he gets shot. But
we also
no, the next scene literally is like that scene where he still kills Pushkin, but he doesn't. I wrote, he probably faked. I feel dumb for even writing.
Yeah, okay, just stop stumbling through your notes, okay? We know what happened in the movie.
Yes.
So he says, I have to die. And then we then have the sequence of him at this sort of like, I guess it's like a political event, and he gets shot. But it's also the way it's set up is like we know from the audience that there's a relationship between them beforehand, and then if he wanted to kill him right then and there, he could have. So the fact that this is moving forward, this is off and strange, and then 007 shoots him, and the way it's shot and everything, you're like, okay, there's no tension unless you're an absolute fucking idiot. You're going to understand what's happening here, right? Like, he's not sacrificing himself. They've set something up in order to draw out the assassin.
Although I was trying to figure out how the blood was coming out, but then you see that reveal. Right
exactly. Which is a good reveal.
I
love that kind of stuff too. There's a lot of movies that do it, but there's a few movies that do it really well. And I think that this is like an example of like that.
And Pushkin even says like, "Oh, James Bond is such a good shot. He was like a great marksman, and he's got the 3 bullets."
He says this is the first time I've ever been happy that James Bond is a good shot.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that it's like a giant vest of ketchup packets or like Kool-Aid packets like all over his body, because it's like it has to be like. There's got to be like 20 blood packs. It can't be one big one, because then it'll just like squirt out like a fucking crazy tube.
Yeah, like I thought that was. I don't know if I've seen that in another movie in quite that way. So
it's one of those things that like visually, as soon as it's revealed, it like makes sense to you in your brain. You don't have to think too hard about how it works, and you don't even really demand to know from like those like people on YouTube and TikTok that are like, today we're testing the James Bond Living Daylights blood vest or whatever.
The Mythbusters.
Yeah, the Mythbusters. Would do
I mean, that would be the 90s equivalent or the early 2000s equivalent. But yeah, like I don't need to see that to kind of get how it works, and I like it. And also, John Rhys Davies is such a charming actor that like his whole sort of like befuddle, like, sorry I had to put you through that, my dear. Oh, I'm so happy that James Bond didn't shoot me in the dick or whatever.
To be fair, the way that this scene was set up and shot, I was for a moment still like the way the scene ends with him like, well, I guess you have to kill me, and then he's on the stage, and then the Necros takes his gun out and is about to shoot, and then he gets blasted and then dies, and then you see James Bond has taken the shots. For a moment, I was like, what is happening? It's very obvious, like if you think about it for a minute. But I thought it was a really good sequence in an action film. I thought it was really well done, and it evoked
I think
motion, which I think is important.
I think for me, it's like intriguing. The intrigue is what about it, because that it's not like your brain is not like, oh my god, James Bond shot that man. Your brain is like, why is James?
What is all of this?
That's what was meant to happen. But yeah, and then we realize, okay, they've done this to placate the villains. The true villains of this movie need to think that they've won in their game of chess that they're playing, their game of 3-dimensional chess, and it works. And then we get to the final act of the movie, which is so weirdly separate from everything else. Like the whole plot is now like its own sort of.
Well, they put it. I was like, how do they? The thing behind your head on the right there, and the thing from the poster game this week. I was like, how do they get to Afghani soldiers on horses? This whole movie I'm going, how do they get to that?
Well, they need to transport a cow heart or some shit in some diamonds to get by heroin.
Yeah. Well, before that, we got a chase scene on a roof, which I feel like is very James Bond. And they're in Tangier, so it's these like square buildings that are low to the ground. He hops down. He's sort of trying to like disguise himself. And these women drive up in a car and they're like, you want to party, basically? And he cannot help himself. Bond has no idea. He's just like, oh, attractive women in a car, and I need a quick getaway. I'm in. And when he gets in the car and they're driving away, they seem like they're trying to rob him. He pulls up some money, and then they're like, and he's like, okay, here's all my money. But then it just turns out that they were agents who were there to pick him up.
CIA
essentially,
agents, right?
Yeah. They work with Felix.
And that's when we meet Felix Leiter.
Felix, yeah.
John Christian Shepherd from Law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your hands
Jack, you'll never be the son I wanted.
your hands are shaking, Dad.
This is why the Red Sox will never win the series until they do.
I need to perform surgery. Can somebody get me a vodka? Shaken, not stirred, please.
Oh my goodness. I wonder if there's ever a one-off line where Sawyer says a James Bond reference to Christian Shepherd, the ghost of Christian Shepherd.
No,
Probably.
We'll never know. Probably not.
There is that one episode where he's like, I'm a con man.
A couple episodes.
Like when they meet at the bar, yeah.
Does the old
Scott Con.
I watched a movie with Scott Conn in it today. It was called Novocaine. It was not good.
It's more like Nova Con.
Oh, you killed Dave Mater. It's a
That was
rarity.
good. I liked that.
I like that you liked that, in fact. The villains rejoice on Pushkin's death, but they get a distressing call. We don't know what it is quite yet. Over to Bond and Kara, they have a drink. She makes them a drink. They allude to, she shakes it, and he's like, just the way I like it, which I thought was fun. And he slams it. He doesn't question it. He doesn't take a sip. He shoots a whole cocktail like a shot. And then Bond tells the truth about the situation and then realizes that she already knew, and he is now drugged by, he keeps being like hydrochloric.
Truth serum, right? Is that the
Yeah.
what why? Because he didn't mean to tell the truth. Is that sort of when he realizes?
I
I thought it
think
was
so.
just knockout juice, but
Hydrochloric whatever is truth serum.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was. But then he passes out, which I
yeah.
didn't know.
She's like, why didn't you kill me? And he's like, nice tits. Was on his face.
I even wrote Bond tells the truth about the situation, which is so weird that I wrote that down because it didn't seem like, I thought that he was just telling her because of this, they're in this situation. But anyway, Necros shows up as he's passing out and just saying the names of different drugs. Basically, he's going to take them away. He's going to do his kidnapping bit again. And Koskov is back. Koskov comes in and he's like, what are you doing with this man? I'm your boyfriend.
I'm your boyfriend. I'm a girl.
I wrote a note about them doing everything under the guise of ambulance. They're transporting. So this is the part where we're introduced to the heart. I want to tell you guys something. I was like, why is this heart beating? Why is it hooked up to diodes? Sometimes when they transport a heart for a heart transplant, they actually keep it beating. That's
I
something
knew that
learned.
because of Hitman, the video game.
Oh.
It all goes back to Hitman.
It always comes back to Hitman.
That's
for
what it
this one.
seems like.
There's a mission in Hitman 2015 where you have to go into this sort of like super billionaire sort of like rehab center that's in like the Japanese mountains, and there's a person in there that's getting a heart transplant. You have to either destroy the heart before the transplant and then you'll win, or you can go and kill him while he's like getting prepped for surgery. And I was like, oh, the heart. And it's like, yes, 47. The heart is being kept beating and has been for over 1 month. It was taken from a rock climber who was 21 years old. You get all this bullshit information.
Yeah, like with the heart, like I guess it makes sense that you would keep it beating. I didn't know that was like this is the way you would do it, but
Probably isn't, but
I don't know if it's always the way you do it, but when I was like, I researched it because I was like, this is such a weird, like, significant moment
Yeah.
that I didn't
Well-
know if this was if this was practice. And sometimes when they do a heart transplant, when they take the heart out, they keep it pumped, like they
Moving,
keep
yeah.
it beating.
But
in a
also,
weird-
it's just a
installed.
ruse, right? Like the
Yeah.
heart transplant is
It's
not a
the-
real thing. It's not even
Yeah,
a real human heart. He says like it's a monkey heart.
It's, it's like a cow's
But-
heart or a monkey's heart.
I like there was no part of me that looked at that and went, "That's not a human heart." But I don't know.
James
if, as
Bond
the audience
knows.
were-
Yeah.
James Bond just know. Of course, he knows. You know, he knows
He's seen
everything.
some human hearts in his day. Yeah.
The first time that you guys saw them open it, though, did you notice that the ice was sparkly, or was it the second time they show it? The sparkles were.
No,
more
I didn't notice
plump?
it the second time. Like to me, I was more fixated on the heart. I was looking at the
Yeah.
ice.
You're like, ugh, veiny, so gross. Look at those ventricles.
Yeah, it was.
Those aortic chambers are fucking.
It felt like something out of a horror movie, you know, or like
It is
like
horrifying. Yeah.
like you know,
beating
like
heart in the
like a
chest.
severed head is still like moving its eyes or something, and I don't know. It was just weird.
I
and
agree.
this is after he was drugged, right? So then they get him on the plane, and then like
Well, they're
this is the
taking
other
him-
my other problem is like how fast she turns back to his side. You know,
I think that she's into Bond, but when she thinks that like Bond is losing, she's like, well, I have to just be with these guys then. But as soon as Bond is back, she's like, Bond's back, baby.
It's true, and
I'm back
also
on Bond's
early in the
side. Team
movie
Bond.
when Bond first tries to kiss her, she was like, "It's impossible that we can kiss because I don't know, culturally you can't."
She's
cheat
like, I
or
don't know
something."
how. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
As-
because of Koskov. Is it because that's her man?
yeah, because that's her man. She's like, "It's impossible," and then he just tries.
way that I will ever kiss you is if we are accidentally stranded on a Ferris wheel. Then I'll fuck the shit out of you, but not
Yeah. Well, okay, I know what I have to do then.
Yeah. Only if you get me a visa so I could come and go from America.
Or you know the Ferris wheel thing, and Bond is like, all right, and he does it.
So they're taking Bond to the Russian, like the KGB or the Russian government or whatever, and I read it's over for our heroes. But luckily, there's a tussle. So they're in that little like sort of holding chamber with the most stereotypical Russian people you've ever seen. There's like that like weird fat guy who's like super strong, and as they're tussling, the like keychain falls out, and he manages to get it because Kara, I think, causes a bit of a diversion. She just pulls it again. No, she doesn't do that. But he grabs it, posts it on the wall, whistles. It does the gas. The gas is pretty ineffective, and James Bond just kind of overpowers him. He does the old
Yeah, it's
you
like a
ever
shitty
watch
fight. It's just a shitty.
You ever watch
fight.
wrestling? He does the wrestling move where he's holding him from behind and he mule kicks him in the dick, basically.
Yeah, not as good as that kitchen fight.
I'm
No.
telling you, like that's all I was thinking about this whole time. He picks up like a shit sort of like spike thing, and like he's gonna stab him with it, and then he just doesn't. Like he doesn't use
Yeah.
it at all. And you're like, why did you even pick that up then? So it feels like they spent a lot of time on that kitchen fight. Or maybe those two actors were just like, what if we do this and this? And like, yeah, film it, let's go. And then Timothy Dalton was like, I don't know, she can hit him with a helmet or
No,
maybe she'll take
instead,
his
here's
helmet
what we
off and hit him
have.
with a bucket.
Instead, they tussle, and then we have Kara go, "We're free," and then Bond says, "We're in a Russian airbase in Afghanistan."
The least freest place on earth.
Yeah. Here's my other question too: is why did they keep Bond alive in the first place? Like if if the whole thing is kill all spies and he's a spy and
He's James Bond. He's a bartering chip, I would say. I was thinking about that too. Why do people hesitate to kill the hero in any movie? You know,
Mhm.
it's the only way that I can explain it is that they're a bartering chip. They're wanted by so many factions and governments and people that they can use this to get something.
Or-
And James Bond is like the most notorious spy, right? So I feel like
There's a
a
moment
good
on the-
villain would just shoot James Bond.
Well,
in
that's
the
what
face.
Seth Green
immediately.
character in Austin Powers, when he's talking to
Yeah,
Dr. Evil.
just
Like, I'll
shoot
I'll go get a gun and we'll shoot him together.
I
It'll
have
be
a gun
fun.
in my
Doctor
room,
was like,
yeah.
no, we can't do that.
No, I have to feed them to sharks with lasers on their heads or something, or what? Why bring him to Afghanistan? There's no plot purpose to bring him to Afghanistan.
No,
from-
there isn't. There's a moment on the plane where he like kind of grazes over. He's like, "Why didn't you just kill me?" And he's like, "I'm not about that. I'm not into the kill the spies. Like, I want to give you to the government or whatever." He says something like he explains it very tidbit, and I was like, "Okay, I guess that placates."
That doesn't add up with everything else you've been doing. Why'd you
It
kill
really
Saunders?
Yeah. Well, I think that he wasn't ordering that shit. That was Whitaker that was doing that, right? Whitaker was the one. And he's like, he likes James Bond because he's like, you saved me twice. Like, I kind of like you, so I don't want to kill you. But if maybe Whitaker will want to kill you, so I'll give
Well,
you
Whitaker
that.
does, and Whitaker does try, right? Especially
Yeah.
after he finds out he burned $500 million or whatever.
of worth of heroin. What happened to all my goddamn opium?
Where's my opium? My pure opium.
I was gonna use that opium to make more money. Like, yeah, that's the other thing about his plan. Is like, I'm gonna use these diamonds that are worth shit all to buy
To buy opium,
heroin,
which is worth way
to
more.
then sell a bunch of heroin to make even more money. And
To
you're
get
like,
more diamonds.
Oh,
it's
I
a
forgot this.
cryptocurrency.
I forgot this is an 80s.
It's a pyramid
movie.
scheme.
Yeah.
Really.
This is how drug dealers make money in the 80s. Is like you sell for shitty diamonds and then you buy up crazy amounts of heroin and sell it to people.
I'm reminded of the RoboCop villain's plan, which is kind of similar, where it's like use the cocaine to control the media, to control the cocaine. Anyway, they track the Diamond Boys, and we see a stair car. There's always hop-ons. Thought I'd mention that from anyway. They use it to.
I don't know the
escape-
reference, but I'm sure it was great.
It's Arrested Development. They
Oh,
they
Mr.
drive a
F.
stair. Mr. F. They drive a. Perfect.
It wasn't working for some reason.
I like that they drive a stair car, and I'm such a moron sometimes when I'm watching movies that I'm just like, oh, what's gonna happen next? And they just use it to get over the fence, and I'm like, why are they driving a stair car? Anyway, that's a little insight. Well, you
Hope they
when
use
you
it
watch
to
this show,
climb over something. They did. They did exactly
you-
what you wanted.
when you watch this show, hey, did you see this one? You will get a very good window into my dumb brain and how it works sometimes. Anyway, they use it to escape, and the guy they saved has guys on horses outside. So we meet Cameron
That
Shaw.
was the second title for this movie, by the way.
Which was
Guys on horses. It was 007 guys on horses.
Guys on horses.
Yeah,
Good
like
uncle.
I feel like this would have been something very unique at the time in movies. Like even going to Afghanistan, a place in the world, especially then, the Americans and the British didn't know much about. You know, and
That's why I thought this was very unique to show, because are there any other James Bond movies? It's always like US, Russia, somewhere tropical, or like Russia, mostly Russia, or
sometimes-
the jungle.
Or sometimes it's like, like Turkey or something, like
Yeah.
in the orbit of Russia. I guess Afghanistan's kind of in the same category.
Is this the unique element of this movie? Is this the like if you're playing the video game of the Living Daylights, is this the final
When you
the
get to
final
the
stage?
Mujahideen like base and you're like, oh fuck, we're gonna have to fight all these Mujahid, and they're like, no, here's a horse, and also I went to Oxford. You're like, what? Who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, like I think that the movie is very interesting, and it has to take place in this very specific year of the Cold War. This idea that the Americans were so happy with the Afghanis because they were rising up against the Soviets, and so they were training them and giving them weapons and everything else, and that's kind of to make. But fast forward 15 years, and it would be a very different attitude towards Afghanistan and the Mujahideen and all this kind of stuff, right?
I mean, even in like the Craig movies, it's like they love that fucking amber filter, and everything's got to be dusty, and the bad guys are all dusty all the time, and like it doesn't fall into it as hard as a lot of American film at that time, post 9/11, it was very much sort of like they villainized the Middle East to a point that it's like still stigmatized to this day.
Like,
And
I
it's,
really remember in
crazy.
True Lies is the first time I really got this sense of like, okay, the Cold War is over. Who's the new bad guy? And it was like, oh, it's the Middle Eastern terrorists, right? Like, that was-
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Because True Lies was like 1993.
We gave them
4 or
training
5,
and weapons,
something
and
like
now
that.
they're using it against us, so they have to be bad. And then
And he's got the rail gun in that, right? And it's called a racer. Sorry.
yeah.
I'll let that marinate a little bit. No, okay.
For British eyes only.
So Cameron Shaw, where do I know the name Cameron Shaw from? Is that sounds?
It does sound like a very like.
Sounds very
Hi, I'm
familiar.
Cameron Shaw. I'm the host of Metro Grocery Shopping Guide on like the fucking TikTok or something. Like he's gonna show you how to make spaghetti dinner for less than $1 or some shit. Cameron Shaw.
That sounds like something like from a character from a movie I've seen or a TV show.
Cameron
know.
Shaw.
Like, isn't
Can,
Shaw?
can you look up Cameron
it,
Shaw, please?
It ends with an H. It's not a W. It's not SHOW. It's SHAH.
Because weren't the Shahs like
Right.
like the kings of Iran and Persia?
Okay, that makes
Uh,
sense.
But this
I
is
don't
not
know.
those places, so it's confusing.
But his name is also like, it's. I mean, he says it's like my name is Cameron, and like he's like when he's saying his name, it sounds like Cameron because it just sounds like his accent. But then when Bond is saying it, he's like putting a little bit too much like Middle Eastern spice on it.
Cameron
And you're like,
Shaw.
what the fuck? Yeah, Bond is getting crazy with the pronunciation.
Well, that's good because
Even
Listen,
the way he says mujahideen, like he says it kind of like he's chewing on food or something, whereas like everybody else says it in the way that we're used to it. Like Timothy Dalton is like muhajireen. Just like what the heck
Like,
did he just say?
Stephen, how does James Bond actually speak any other languages than English? Or because I don't remember him ever like he understands Russian.
Oh my
I would say.
god! I think that he does here and there, but it's always like cheekily so. Like it's meant to be like I understand everything you're saying, and then they're like, "Well, we might as well speak in American stupid language, okay?"
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that they don't really go into it too much because they don't want to inundate the audience with subtitles when they
Sure.
don't need to, especially in the late 80s and like the boomer generation. I don't know if you've ever tried to put subtitles on a TV around a boomer. They act like
Yeah.
you're
I-
insane.
my
I
dad
can't read that.
specifically,
I want to watch the movie, not read it. What are we reading a book over?
And you're like, Shut
My dad's
up.
got an
You're like,
incredible
"Just have trouble
surround sound."
processing stuff."
My dad's got an incredible surround sound system in his house that only works if you play it. The pass through only works through his fucking like cable box, but he's got a laptop. He knows how to like play TV shows off a computer, but we cannot figure out how to get it to pass through his surround sound. And I'm like, Dad, can we? Because it sounds like shit when you play a fucking MKV file on his like through VLC media player on the TV. And I'm like, can we just put it on? He's like, no, it's too distracting. Like the distraction is that you can see what they're saying. And he's like, no, it's too distracting. I'm trying to read and watch at the same time. And I'm like, you don't understand though. I need it. I need to be able to read and watch. At
I
the
also
same
have, like,
time.
a bit of a fucking reading or processing disorder, like an auditory
Yes.
processing disorder.
That's
So
what I'm
like
saying.
I actually kind of require it, and I have to like fight with my parents. Even my sister is like, "What the fuck? We don't need. What do you put it?" And I'm like, "Can you guys just? All right, fine. I'll be able to sit here and be like, I don't know what these people are saying.
I got
They have-
75% of this movie.
Yeah, I'm glad that you guys really couldn't fucking watch a movie with subtitles on. Anyway,
But the irony is that I don't think my dad is getting any of it because it sounds so bad that
that's the other thing
When you
though. Is
just-
boomers also turn their volume up to fucking like Spinal Tap levels of loudness.
They don't like to multitask. They don't like to read. They don't like to hear things. It's, so it's
They just want it to be
That's perfect.
glaringly like they want it to rattle the house so loud that your bones are shaking in your body.
Like-
But
like my dad is the most progressive 64-year-old I think I've ever seen. And
But
he still has all these
does have
weird
the
idiosyncrasies.
boomerisms. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
tons of boomerisms that, and they get mad at you too. They don't just like find a common ground. They're like, no, never will I watch a movie with subtitles on. What is it? What are we watching? A foreign film? What is this, Japanese or some shit? I'm like, no.
I think I need to meet your parents. And
I'm a little bit boomery though, because me and my wife are watching Shogun, and when the show has a lot of Japanese subtitles, and I'm like, why can't they just dub this? And I don't.
yeah,
mean it.
I'm more of a dub guy than a subtitle guy. Like I watch Squid
Yeah.
Game with dubs, not the subs.
Me too. Yeah.
But
I watched I watched Parasite. There's no dub of Parasite.
and it was fine. Like it depends on
Yeah.
the project. For me, like it depends on. I think it also depends on the language. In some weird ways, like if it's.
I go so far that I watched In the Living Daylights in Japanese with English subtitles.
And nobody in this
was
movie
better.
is Japanese. It's
was
incredible.
fucking
It's
better.
incredible that you did that. I love that you did that. I think it's perfect that you did that.
Kidding, I didn't do that.
Okay. Well, James Bond and Kara are now with the Afghan resistance. I don't know what they're resisting. I think they're like Russia.
The
get out of
Soviets
Afghanistan.
and their communism.
Yeah. They're like, we need to go back to make Afghanistan great again.
Right,
kinda
that's what they're
saying.
about. Yes, exactly.
We just made a great deal with an American financier and real estate mogul.
There's also a great the score.
He said he's going to make Afghanistan great again.
Like, it's completely plausible because Trump was like definitely.
I don't know if Jason heard my joke.
I didn't. I moved on to the next thing in my head, but I don't. You don't need to repeat it. It'll be funny to me later.
It was fantastic.
Tim, you're right.
Tim, Dave is the one who's in charge of the United Federation of Podcasts. If
He's
he
the
didn't,
undiscovered country himself.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more United Federation of Podcasts 2025. Is going to be a big year.
he's also been the president of the United Federation of Podcasts way past his term.
It's true. So
I didn't know I
we
was
need
the
to
president,
impeach-
but
we need to impeach Dave Mater
that's okay.
and make
You
it
can impeach
make
him.
the United Federation of Podcasts great again.
No,
Yeah.
he's the supreme chancellor. You're like, get my attack on my life. He's Palpatine.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about the score. It swells here in a way that I noticed. The score through this whole movie has been pretty good, but once we get to Afghanistan, for whatever reason, the score goes crazy. It goes hard. It feels really epic, and I wrote good stuff. This is cool, which means if I know what I mean when I write a note, it's good. The late third act of this movie really kicked it into overdrive as not just a regular James Bond movie, but kind of an all-time good feeling spy action adventure film. Like this almost gets to a point where it starts feeling like a James Bond. This is Spielbergian a little bit.
This starts to feel like a James Bond movie at the end of this James Bond movie.
No, but I mean in the sense that when you think of GoldenEye, you think of great moments from GoldenEye, when they're up on the satellite, or when they're in the facility, or when they're in the jungle.
Oh, you're talking about the video game. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it feels video gamey near the end for sure. But there is one thing that kind of bugged me at the end, and it's like they keep trying to get James Bond, and then Kozkov keeps being like, "No, don't shoot! You might shoot the plane." And
which
they're all
has
What?
But- because there's a bomb in the heroin. Who put the bomb in there?
Who
Bond
put the
did.
bomb
James
in the
Bond put
heroin?
it. James Bond put it in there. He says he's like, I need. What is this? He says I need some C4 and a detonator, and then a second later, it's like blip blip, and he has it.
Oh yeah,
and
right.
he's-
He makes the bomb
Yeah,
that he has to defuse at the end, and then he uses it to blow them. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
But
But-
he's more concerned, I think, about the plane getting damaged to be unflyable because he wants the heroin to get delivered to wherever.
But he can always put it in another plane.
I don't know. This is the thing, is like, it's this thing where he's so concerned about the plane that it just makes you feel safe for James Bond, because it's removing all the tension, because James Bond is inside the plane shooting at people and everybody's like,
Right.
and then the one guy's like, don't shoot at the plane. Leave
Yeah,
him alone.
And Necros is like, okay, boss, whatever
Yeah.
you want. And,
Necros is like, well, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, jump in there and break his neck. Like, just snap it. Don't shoot anything, though. So you're like, okay, that's fine, I guess. But for me, it removed like a ton of tension, where I'm like, the music and the camera angles and James Bond shooting at people is tense. But the fact that the bad guy who's in charge of everybody keeps saying, stop shooting at him, removes all of it. It just makes me feel like very safe.
And there's the whole thing with Kara in this whole sequence too, where they get separated, and then she's rallying the Afghanis and whatever to go after them, but then she's kind of separate from the Afghani group, but there's bullets and grenades flying
Going off
everywhere,
everywhere.
and like it's a war zone.
And it's like they needed that, I think, because if they didn't have that, it would be a bunch of people not shooting at a plane as James Bond took off with the plane. like we need to have something else.
Well,
here.
they're all just quietly watching him fly away.
They're like, fuck.
Block the runway, and then
James Bond.
there's the plane that's landing on the runway. as they're
Yeah,
taking
and that
off.
was another thing where they're like, how do we make this more exciting? What if a plane is landing while they need to take off? That'll be an amazing stunt. And you know what? It probably was
sort
for
of
the time.
outline what happens here, because
I mean,
there was
I
a-
do, but I have to go.
Do it. I'll
to
say
the-
words.
I have to go to the 00 rescue.
All right, stick with me here, Dave. I'm
I'm
gonna
with you. I'm here.
Sherpa us through to the end, because we did it. We came in a little under time, not really. Basically, James discovers the Afghans have pure opium, right? He puts the knife in the bag, and they're going to use the diamonds to give to the guy for the opium, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that. It's disguised as medicine, which is messed up. Bond infiltrates. He puts on the mask. They immediately don't say, why is the top of that guy's face white as fuck?
Yeah. Where'd you get the pale Afghani from? Is he a Rusky or something?
Kara goes after him, and so the resistance, and he quickly puts a bomb together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he was doing, but that is, as it turns out, Bond takes it into the plane and then gets seen as he's trying to escape, and we have a giant shootout. The Afghans show up, and they have a battle, which I wanted to talk about the fact that I was waiting for this. Like, I knew this movie was going to end up in a big like war moment, like a big the Ruskies versus the Afghans. Like I knew this was happening. It finally happens, and naturally Bond steals the very plane that has the bomb in it. So we have a ticking timer clock sort of happening, and I wrote the battle feels pretty good. Lots of action captured. He flies the plane over a plane. There's a plane coming in, landing. He flies the plane over it. I wish this was done a little bit better. I guess there's no real way you can do this practically. Like in CGI, they would have
Yeah, it would have looked
focused in
better
on-
if they could have
Exactly.
done it digitally, but back then you either do
But
it
it kinda-
miniatures or you do some camera tricks, I guess, is the other option, right? So
Well, they go the way of camera trick here, where they cut away and it cuts back, and he's on top of the plane and flying over it. The plane crashes, and they do this really funny thing where like the wings of the plane land on a jeep, and the jeep explodes with the wings of the plane that crashed. Like awesome, but ridiculous. But
what's
fun.
ridiculous to me about it mostly is like Kozkov's in the truck in the car that's following them here, right?
And it gets
And
blown up,
and then like so that plane that's landing crashes into Kozkov, and it like his everything blows up, and I'm like, oh, that's the end of him. I guess that's how he dies in this movie. But no, he doesn't die here. He
He
lives.
just has a couple burns on his face.
Yeah, he's just like I don't know.
It's even
like,
more
what-
crazy because it cuts back to him in the car being like, ah! There's like fire all around him. He's
And there's like
"Oh
a
my
plane
God."
there, and I guess and the pilot and the people who were landing that plane, they were okay too. So
Yeah.
it was.
It felt very like like in the old like Hulk cartoon or the Hulk movie where all the people get out of the tank before the Hulk smashes it or whatever. It felt kind of like that.
So you can pull the
Was there
top
somebody
up,
in like the air traffic control tower who was like, okay, hey, you can land your plane, but just so you know,
There's
there is a
another
plane
plane
that's
taking off."
taking off and there's a whole battle going on down here. So watch out, you know.
They did seem like they were very shocked when they were landing, being like, "What the heck's going on down here?" Like these
But
fucking
also,
Russian
we
guys.
have to mention that these two guys, I guess that they are technically Russian, but
they're
maybe
landing
they
at a Russian
weren't.
airbase.
I guess, but did they just die for no reason? Like are they just casualties of
They
war?
seemed like
and
they were British to me, and I was like, why are these?
See that's what I'm asking. Like,
They're those two guys from Reboot, you know, those two like British guys from Reboot that are in every episode. They're like, "Oh my, Blinky, what the hell's happening here?" Yeah,
hack and slash,
no,
Maybe.
bulk and skull.
no, they're binomes or whatever the fuck they're called in Reboot. Actually, I say whatever they're fuck. I know
Biggs-
they're binomes. I know everything.
Biggs and Wedge.
Jay and Silent Bob, I think.
Jay and
I
Silent
think it was Jay and
Bino.
Silent. I like that one the best. Anyway, James Bond defuses the very bomb that he placed on this plane, which I thought was hilarious. He's like rapidly trying to defuse it, but also like loses it in a minute. Necros made it on, and they battle next to and outside of the plane while the plane's flying. So they're tussling. The opium, there's like a rope, but
Net?
like a net of opium just hanging out of the plane. They're punching each other on it, climbing all over it. That's very video game.
I'm gonna make a D&D item called the Opium Net.
Yeah, it's a net filled with opium, and it ends up getting cut open. All I could think of is when that net cut open was some farmer just gets like 6 bags of opium.
And he's like,
Yeah.
and he's so happy.
And it becomes Worldmind knows it's hack and slash.
It's not hack and slash, guys. Hack and slash.
Reboot?
Oh my god! I'm talking about like the two British like Crimson.
Yeah.
The binomes
trying to-
that like that
What are
like
their
they're
names?
like the zeros and ones guys. I think that one of them he calls one of them Blinky. I think he's like, I say Blinky.
Oh, okay.
And then like the other one's always like a pilot, and he's like, bum, 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 and he's like, he's in so many games. They only show up in games. They're never outside. It's like they're these two guys that
They're only in
show
the
up
game when
yeah,
it
they only show-
lands.
It's like their whole existence outside of Reboot games is like waiting for a game to come down, and they're like, we've got to get to the game.
Yeah.
or whatever.
When it's just mainframe, they're like, whatever. We
Yeah,
don't do
okay.
shit.
Yeah.
So as they're tussling on this net of
Oh
opium,
man, that would be a good story to like see where those two characters are at. Maybe he's like an Iron Man, like he's like a Tony Stark, like he's like super rich, and he's like, we've got to get to the game to make sure mainframe survives. Like,
Well,
he's like
that's
a
what
super-
that's what Enzo and then Bob do, right? They try to get in, so.
exactly. They're like Enzo and
reboot
Bob.
the reboot coming 2025.
We just never get to see them in action outside.
Welcome to this reboot
Oh.
podcast.
There you go. Worldmind found it because Worldmind is a
I knew
huge
that Binky
fan.
was right. See, Binky.
Yeah,
I say Binky.
Farquaad.
I'm gonna fucking rule that Trivial Debates episode of Reboot. By the way,
I believe you. Yeah.
are you
And
not
I'm
on it
going to
too?
rule.
I might. I don't know. He hasn't told me if I'm part of it. I will be part
Instead
of it.
of- instead of doing It's Always Sunny on this season, you guys are doing Farscape. So
I'm not.
pivot, boys.
I think that he
I-
might change it because he can't find anybody who loves.
I'm going to the
Farscape.
Babylon 5 one.
Yeah.
So.
Worldmind asked me, "Do you know anybody that likes Farscape?" And I said, "Nobody likes Farscape."
Nobody. Well,
I mean,
Gavin.
I liked it when I was a kid, but I don't know enough about it. I think that
Yeah.
what should happen is that he should be a contestant on it, and then one of us should do his job so that he can be. Because clearly he fucking loves Farscape that he wants to.
Yeah, him and Davin love it.
Yeah, I'll produce. I'll produce that episode. I'll put up the buttons.
I'll host it,
All right,
Yeah.
so that Murphy can be part of it.
and I'll do a pilot voice the whole time.
But this
Holy
this
shit,
this
I'm a
this
bug.
fight on the plane with the door open and the net hanging out, and it's ridiculous. This whole fight is ridiculous.
It's
Like,
awesome though. It's so ridiculous. It's so stupid, but it's very final battle. Like this isn't even the final battle of the movie, but it's very like we have to get rid of the Bond villain, and I thought it was awesome. The fact that he's holding onto his boot, and the end of this guy's life is him being like, him cutting James Bond cutting his own boot off, and this guy going, no, stop, and then he just goes. It's awesome.
Yeah, that part's good, and like, and then I'm like, this whole realization that Bond, he has to do a whole bunch of other stuff after that, like with only one boot, like drive the jeep, and I don't know.
How you gonna drive a jeep with one boot, Bond?
It's his right boot too. It's
Das Boot.
Best Jim Henson production. I don't know.
I mean, it's good. I mean, Farscape is good. I'm not ever gonna say that it's bad, but it's one of those things that like I didn't get into it as much as I maybe should have, considering how much I love puppets and Muppets and shit.
I'm a big fan of them too, but I would say I'm more of a Muppet Show person than a Farscape person.
Yeah,
I think it was also like the time that it came out in my life. I was like just on the cusp of being like, I'm too cool for TV anymore. Or, like I only watch movies now, and like it was a TV show, and I was like, whatever, fuck TV.
What are you, the opposite of me?
Yes, that's why we do a podcast together.
We are reverse each other. We are kind of mirror fight.
Mirror fight. That's another
Mirror
t-shirt idea.
Writing it down. It's just pictures of us. Let me get us through the next little bit. I love the fact that James Bond climbs back up after Necros is dead. All the opium is spread across the countryside. He climbs back up, and they even do a thing. There was a direction choice where the rope falls out of his hand and he almost dies and has to grab another rope and get in. And then he realizes that the bomb is still counting down and has to like search through. And when he gets the fucking package, it's got 3 seconds on the clock and counts down to 2, and he just diffuses it. Boom.
I guess because he made the bomb, I guess I can buy that part, but it's also the fact that the bomb it just happens to be in one of the opium bags that didn't fly out of the back along with all the rest of them.
And then before he goes and looks for it, he closes the back of the plane. Just find it and throw it out the back. What's the worst thing that could happen? I guess blow the back of the plane off if it.
Well, the other confusing part of this is like, so like then he uses the bomb to help out the Afghani guys, right? Like by blowing up the bridge here, that comes up in like the next part of the moment.
Well, no, because the next thing is like he runs back up to the cockpit and they struggle to figure out if they're going to crash into the cliffs in front of them.
Yeah, but this is happening simultaneously, I think, isn't it?
It's all happening within a few seconds here, and then. But I'm like, the plane planes go fast. Like they don't. They would be very far away.
Go fast. Okay?
They would be very far away from.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, he tosses the bomb onto a literal bridge. I wanted to ask you guys: was this a miniature or was this a mid-mature?
It looked like a miniature to me. Like
mid-mature is probably more accurate, but yeah,
like a big miniature.
Because the way
the middle falls, I was like it bounced in a weird way, and I was like, if that was super small, there's no way that it would.
The
bounce.
best big miniature, I think, in my James Bond memory is the beginning of GoldenEye, where it's like you watch it and you're like, it's clearly a miniature, but like you love it. You know, when you're like, that's tiny, but it's also probably really big. It's probably also like bigger than me.
Sometimes miniatures look great. You know, sometimes you can't tell at all. You know, I think it's a lost art, really. Now
I think that the thing that in the early 90s, especially, it's like the miniatures themselves look amazing, and the only things that give it away are water and fire. And like because our people and that
but
like our minds can immediately tell how big a flame should be and how big a wave is. And when you see a miniature, the element is broken by the flame or the liquid. And like, but I still find it like so charming, right? Even though the flames are too big, I'm like, those flames are moving as though they're too big for what is happening on screen. I still love it, and I kind of prefer it. I wish that it still happened, you know. Like I'm like, give me more, because they still use miniatures now, but they also dress them up with digital explosions and digital water, so the miniatures are still there, so that element still connects in your mind.
Like in Independence Day when they're blowing up all those places, that's mostly all miniatures, and I think
Yeah.
you know, it
But they're
looks-
giant ass miniatures. Like the White House miniature is like the size of a truck.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It's not
It's
like
not that miniature. It's
Yeah,
just,
it's still pretty big.
A middle nature, I think.
Or
is
like
the
Lord of the Rings is
coined
like
phrase.
almost everything in Lord of the Rings is miniatures, but it's like, you know, it has digital explosions or digital water added.
I think what I mean too is like if you think about the way that they build Godzilla cities and have like two people in kaiju costumes like fight in like you know what I mean? Like
Okay, I didn't know that's what you were thinking about. Just dun 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 dun.
yeah,
Okay.
dun 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 dun. Sorry, I went full rap. Say Drake, the plane is losing fuel now. Well, that's the end. R.I.P. credits. I
See,
thought
my
it'd be
brain
funny.
kind of shuts down for these moments at the end of James Bond movies when there's like too many things happening where I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I only care about like, is he killing the villain that he's fighting? Is the secondary element, which in this case is his Afghan friends, are they going to be okay? And where is the main villain that he has to make his way towards going to be? And
Well,
so like my brain kind of shuts off for all this because I'm like, I know everything's going to be all right. No one's going to fucking die at this point.
We talked
are we
about this
headed?
we talked about this at the very beginning. I think Dave mentioned it at the very beginning of the show. They managed to be like, our lives are going to end. We're going to crash directly into that mountain. However, we are able to. So the Jeep is on some sort of thing, like
Yes.
a sled, and the way that they do it is they open the hatch, they hit the parachute, they're on the sled, and it just perfectly slides out onto the ground and lands perfectly.
but yeah, the parachute pulls them out. It's not like it like to even do what they do, what we're led to believe happens here. They would have to at least have gotten close to the ground, right?
Yeah.
You know,
but they're not. They keep saying like we're fucked, like we're gonna.
There's
crash, we're
mountains
gonna
everywhere.
careen
There's
into that
nowhere to
mountain.
land. But then in the next shot, I'm like, there's clearly like this massive amount of desert and field around them. I'm like, it seems like you have lots of places to land. And where did you just land that Jeep? And like, it just, I know I'm not supposed to think about it too hard, but I am.
But from a production standpoint, we can see the fact that there's places to land.
Yeah.
Yet the plane has to crash and explode, and the fact like it defies the laws of physics and reality that they can just hit a button and just be perfectly placed onto the ground, which is what
if you
ends
can get
up
the plane
happening.
that close to the ground, then you might as well land it at this point.
Exactly.
You know?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
But there's mountains.
But
there's
they're
mountains
over
right
there.
over there.
Like then the Jeep should have landed on a mountain. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like
Like teetering,
teetering,
on
yeah.
the
something.
He's like, look this way, and he does like the classic radio. Like, he turns the radio.
yeah,
know,
perfect.
and
like a Warner Brothers cartoon.
and they need to go back to Tangier for the final boss thing, right? Which is not next to Afghanistan. Morocco and Afghanistan.
Well, they're in
are-
Karachi when they land here.
Karachi's
and then-
in Pakistan.
Yeah, but then it just cuts to the warmonger and Bond like talking in his Tangier's.
In his like little museum
Room.
there. So there's a time jump of an undisclosed amount of time.
Yeah, this is where I was like, so because again, my mind kind of like shut down for this last bit where I'm like, they're gonna get out. The mountains are not that much of it. And then I'm like, wait, what happened? When did he get here? And I'm like, wait, does he land where this is? Where are they now? Did he take another plane? I don't really understand. what's
Well,
going on.
I think we're led to believe that Christian Shepherd, John Terry's character, got him there or helped
Yeah.
him get there or something.
Right.
But-
Well, and then this is like another video game boss moment. This is like the
Yeah.
most video game thing I've ever.
This
fucking
is like Metal Gear when
seen.
you're
This is before
when
video
you're
games.
Snake and
had
you're
this.
moving around corners, and it reminds me of that thing where you have to like wait. Or Resident Evil is another good example. You have to like wait for them to unload their clip, and then you get out and take one small shot. But the whole sequence takes 5 minutes total. So
I kind of like it, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, in a world where I've fought so many video game bosses like this, I'm like,
yeah,
I've had,
I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna
Yeah.
blow him up from behind.
yeah,
Which he
or
does
yeah,
with
or
the-
you're gonna use the environment to take him out.
Yeah.
I can't shoot through his ballistic plastic shield over his
Well,
gun.
I wanted to talk to you guys about that. The fact that he has like a top of the line machine gun that has this bleeding edge technology, like bulletproof,
Can we also
shield.
make another
but
t-shirt?
also
Another
he's
t-shirt
got
design has to be bleeding edge technology because you've said it 100 times this episode. That was Jason's nickname
Noted.
in high school. Bleeding edge technology.
yeah, because I got my period like in first period.
First period. Like for me, this final boss battle, because he's already been through that fight with Necros and on the plane, and this felt very anticlimactic to me because there's no way that this Whitaker character is a physical match for James Bond, even though he gets in with his little model table to get
He's
the
got the
jump out
model
of or
table.
whatever.
He's got the shelf of weapons. He's got the bleeding edge technology fucking armor that he's got on. Because James Bond shoots him, and he's like, "Haha, you're no match for my bulletproof gun and also my bulletproof armor." And I'm going, I mean, it's
this
it's
is
good.
also,
it
like,
makes
another
sense,
sort
but
of-
he literally just sets up the bomb that blows
This is
up
also like
behind him,
another
which
sort of
is-
cliche boss fight
Yeah.
that I love. I love the idea of a foe that you know you can beat in most circumstances having an absolute edge because you're in there like their fucking lair or whatever, right? Like he can press a button and pull out a gun. He calls it like a gun like a fucking brain scrambler or something at one point. I'm like, he's got like ray guns in his drawers and shit, and he can just constantly pull
Yeah,
out
it's like kind of
weapons.
like a Mysterio almost kind of esque villain or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah.
I was
Right.
thinking in the movie Solo, like at the end of Solo, he fights like this like crime boss who has almost like a museum of weapons as his sort of like his main room for meetings, and then that's where the final duel happens, and he's constantly grabbing weapons off of like these display racks and stuff. Or like the Matrix Reloaded, that staircase fight where there's like all these weapons on the walls. And I like the idea of like combatants being, you know, underpowered to fight somebody who's overpowered, but also having all these options to try and fight you. It's like the kitchen fight at the beginning where it's like, where's the best place to fight? The kitchen. Everybody knows the kitchen has lots of weapons inside of it, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't play it even again, like that kitchen fight is way better than this fight because it doesn't
Way better.
it has a great setup, and on paper it like looks amazing in my mind. A man who's like, I design weapon, or I like have all these like crazy designed weapons and I can fight you with them. But I don't know, it doesn't play
I
out
wanted this battle to
as
be
well as
like
I thought it would.
longer, but you're right. Like he already killed the Bond villain, and we already had a great fight scene early in the movie. This is the epitome of like an MCU ending where you go.
Yeah,
in
we
and
have
just
we have to
kill
we have
the-
to tie up this loose end and get rid of the
Yeah.
of the final two villains, Whitaker and
But the irony is,
Oscar.
like, Whitaker was one of the most intriguing villains to me because of the way that our world is right now. Like, I wanted to see the like warmonger American character get his comeuppance in a much more satisfying way, but he's
thing that,
so
like, freaks
hell
me out
bent
is, like-
on warmongering that he just ends it. Like, Steve, you said the funniest thing when you're like, he's got his little Warhammer set that he's just playing with when Bond walks in. He's like, I've got you now and we're in my clutches, and Bond's like, no, actually.
But he does
You
have
don't.
he has him on the ropes for a second, but like not
Yeah.
long enough for us to appreciate him as like a combative genius or anything.
Bond also, like, he had time to like think about his plan of attack here with Whitaker, and he doesn't bring any backup of any kind, or it's just kind of
Yeah, it seems like Bond maybe didn't respect him enough to do that. You know, he's like, I probably can just go in there and like kick him in the knee backwards and he'll be like, oh Jesus, like fall over or something.
My
Yeah.
fucking sciatica.
Because
is
imagine
affected by my
imagine
knee
you
kick.
knew that like Donald Trump was in a room alone and you had to go in there and like either kill him or arrest him you would probably be like, I can probably just go in
That
there.
seems
and
easy.
beat the shit out of him, right? And then like you go
Yeah.
in there and he's like, oh yeah, well I have all this fucking crazy technology in here.
I got a gun with a piece of plexiglass on it that's somehow bulletproof or something.
Bet you
I
didn't
don't
expect
know.
that, did you? Oh jeez, the best.
They had to build that. Like the production had to build that weird gun thing.
The other thing though
Which
is
I
that
think is
like I
great.
can imagine if like what Donald Trump wants to happen does happen, he will like start wearing like a military uniform at some point,
Yeah.
even though he's like never served in the military. He'll be like this fucking guy being like, no, yeah, I was, I flew all the jets, every single one.
shin splints.
Sometimes I went up higher than the clouds. The clouds were below me at one point.
Well, listen, he beats him handily. He's arrested. Koskov is arrested as well. He's not murdered. Koskov is like,
Did
haha, I
did
did it,
anybody-
Bond. I
I think it's
defeated you.
implied that he's going to be killed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
taking him to the gallows.
he's going to the gallows.
Put him in the diplomatic bag or something, or
Which
He
is like
says
a body
diplomat. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did anybody like track or note what statue killed him? Like what statue fell on him? Like who it was?
oh, it was
Was it a giant
Waterloo.
alligator?
I think it was Napoleon. I think it was a Napoleon statue.
Yeah, because he says Waterloo, right? He's like he found his Waterloo or whatever,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
or something like that. He met his Waterloo.
Which I think is a Napoleon reference. Yeah. so-
1815, crushed his ass. Waterloo. Said something like that, guys.
Listen, I have to go to the Waterloo, so we got to wrap this up. Kara goes back to the orchestra. We get that scene where we see her playing her cello with a bullet hole in it. Cameron Shaw busts in, and Bond has drinks ready with Kara, and they bang again in credits. So that's the movie.
Not before the Afghani guys show up.
Yeah.
I don't know, if, like just to show us they really want us to like those guys in the movie.
I liked them. I thought Cameron Shaw.
Afghanistan in 1987.
Cameron Shaw seemed like he was a white guy in brown face. You know, that's what
I
it
think
looked
he actually
like.
is, but
He wasn't though. What the heck?
Are you sure?
No, Art
Was he
Malik is
browned up a
actually
little?
he is a Pakistani actor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So-
fuck me, I guess.
He seemed that way because he sounded white to me.
he said he had a British accent. I didn't buy it.
I didn't buy it. But that, you know what a good movie. What a great film. Everybody's talking about how good the film was, especially us.
You know what? Like this was like I enjoyed this much more than watching it. So it was
Yeah. Well, welcome to Hey Did You See This One, where it's always better to talk about the movie than to actually watch it.
I
in a
mean,
lot of
sometimes
cases.
both. Sometimes we have
Yeah.
watch parties where we watch them together. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you in Toronto? I don't even know where you are.
Oh, I'm in Burlington. That's
Okay.
it. You know, near.
Well,
Hamilton.
maybe one day we all get together and we watch not this movie, but another movie,
Not this movie, but
Yeah.
a movie,
A movie,
a
yeah.
better movie,
a
perhaps.
better movie than this. Maybe we'll
Uh,
watch Star Wars Episode 1: Phantom Menace.
If you
And I
guys
can
do a
show you
Star
my
Trek
Watto
movie,
truck.
I would love to be here for one of those or more of those.
I think
So
that's
Also, if we do a Star Trek month, we're definitely going to have a UFP crossover, and also that This Is the Way.
I don't
This is
even
the
know how
way.
we would structure that, like odds and
Hey guys, does this sound like The Mandalorian? This is the way.
yeah, I'd say yes.
We have some things we have to take care of. We went a little long. We got a little lost in the sauce. We made a bit of a joke out of it. We made some comedy happen, and that's the point of the show. But what I'd like to ask you guys right now, if you would like to do your final thoughts and your Home Alone of it all, Steve.
If you had to pick one, what you think the Home Alone of it
is
all?
the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone?
I
of it
really
all
gotta
happens?
know.
When is the Home Alone of
What
it all?
is the Home Alone of it all? Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
That's it. That's the Home Alone of it all.
So, Dave, this is your first time on the show. Let me lay it out for you. Final thoughts, pretty straightforward, but the Home Alone of it all is essentially, if you've seen the movie Home Alone, you know that there's a point in the movie where Kevin McAllister slaps down a blueprint on that blueprint, it's got a lot of little traps that he's set up throughout the house.
Yeah.
And what I've posited, what I've sort of determined, is a lot of films. We've posited that a lot of films have sort of their own moment that defines the film in that way. What we've also sort of realized is that the Home Alone of all could be like your favorite part of the movie, or like sometimes it's just the third act. But what I need to ask you to do right now is give me your Home Alone of it all, your final thought, and if you have a rating of this movie, please give us your rating. The rating could be like just a standard stars out of 5 out of 10, or it could be some nonsensical nonsense. So the floor is yours.
I'm just trying to understand this blueprint. So what do you want me to give you exactly?
The Home Alone of it all is basically like when the movie starts for you, or your favorite part of the movie. Basically.
Oh, okay. My favorite part of the movie is the kitchen fight. Like James Bond's not even in the scene. You know, that it's only like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but it feels so real, that fight. It feels like if two guys really were gonna throw down in a kitchen, this is maybe how it would happen. And so I really appreciate that part of it. Rating wise, I would give this probably like a 5. Like, it's okay, but it's I'd rather watch GoldenEye, you know. But I think I would rather watch this than maybe some of the later Brosnan movies that got a little crazy. Whatever came after Die Another Day, or did anything come after Die Another Day?
Tomorrow's Never After Yesterday, or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tomorrow Died Yesterday. Yeah, that's
Tomorrow
my favorite fake James Bond title that sounds like it could be real is Tomorrow Died Yesterday, and it's about like global warming or some shit.
Right. Yeah. So, and did I answer all
Like
your questions?
your final thought also.
I thought it was a absolute pleasure to be here with you guys and talk all about this. So thank you for inviting me. I really
Amazing.
and moving it all around. So
Thank you. Steven,
That's
Double O Ding Dong.
Double O.
Tell me all about it. Give me what I want.
Double O Ding Dong here. So, my Home Alone of it all, I think, is probably the moment when I realized, oh, this henchman character is Agent 47, like a blueprint for Agent 47 for a video game series that would then go on to be something that traversed almost my entire adult or mature-ish, you know, like 12 to current day. And I realized that like all of James Bond has kind of informed that series, a thing that I also really like. Probably more so than James Bond. I can probably give you more Agent 47 lore than I can James Bond lore, but I do appreciate them both as this sort of like, you know, clandestine, secretive government agencies fighting each other. It's all very interesting and fun. And I like James Bond, and I always have, but I'm not like a James Bond person. So I think the moment for me is when he does his like, oh, I'm sorry. And the guy's like, fucking wanking, yanking, Yankee doodle or whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then the next time you see him, he has a different accent. And then he's changing his accents. He's changing his costume. All of that was like very much my favorite part of the movie because I think it was the most interesting. And much like a lot of the henchmen in James Bond movies, they kind of stick with you, right? Like for me, it's not like, what is the story of Die Another Day? The story of Die Another Day for me is, oh, he fights a guy with like a guy who has alopecia who has diamonds in his face. Like, the diamond face guy is the thing that I remember the most, right? Like I love the henchman. So for this movie to have sort of a standout henchman, one that doesn't really kind of like reach as high as the others in the pantheon, to watch this and be like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like this character. Was special for me.
He's not like a Jaws or Odd Job level,
No.
but like
he's still cool, and he's still
cool.
good.
Really cool.
And he was apparently he's the same guy from Die Hard. He was one of
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
of the henchmen in that. So
didn't track
makes
it.
sense now.
But I think like if I have to boil it down even more, it's when he's like, "I scare the living daylights out of it," and I'm like, okay, yeah.
They
love
said the
that.
name of the movie in the movie.
Exactly. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably give it a whole bunch of unexploded heroin out of exploded heroin. You know, the heroin you can still use it, but it would be better if the heroin exploded, I guess. And then my final thought is like, you know, I like this movie, but again, like you, Dave, I enjoyed talking about it more than I did watching it. We did Dr. No last week, the first James Bond, and I thought I was going to have a lot more trouble with that one than I did with this one. But I did actually, I fell asleep watching this movie. This movie kind of lulled me into a boredom sleep. Whereas Dr. No, like when things are moving, all of it is important. Everything that's happening is kind of important to the story. So you have to pay attention and you feel yourself locked in a little bit more. Whereas this, not so much. There are things that are happening in this movie that you do not at all need. And it's not kind of like pushing you into that connective tissue nature in terms of thinking. So yeah, it's not bad, but it's more fun to talk about for sure.
My Home Alone doll this week is Tangier. Basically, Tangier into Afghanistan. I loved when it was switched up. You know. Also, the exploding milk bottles, incredible.
Yeah.
My final thought of this film is I agree with you guys. It was much more fun to talk about than to actually watch, but it wasn't one of those movies where this happens a lot on the show where movies that are more fun to talk about than to actually watch means the movie's kind of crappy. This movie's not bad. Like, it's fun to watch. There's a lot of moments in the score where I was getting caught up in the music. You know, I was like listening to the elements of the 80s influence on the score for the film. And I love new retro wave, and what the James Bond theme having the new retro wave influence really piqued my interest a lot of times during this film. And I'm glad they did that. But like towards the end of the movie, you just have them just doing a really robust score that really exemplifies what it means to be watching a James Bond movie. So this movie is very much not only a good movie, but a good James Bond, I would say. I give it a 3.6 out of 5 as my regular rating. And if I was to actually rate it, I would give it just a small town farmer living out in the wasteland of the desert and having $4 million worth of opium falling down onto my farm.
Onto your one goat that you use for
Onto my murders my one goat.
Oh, damn it.
Completely eliminates it, but now I'm a millionaire. It doesn't get old. That's the thing about that sound effect. Like, we have a lot of sound effects on this program, but that one is incredible. But just to round things out, I think now it's time for plugs.
All right, let me just plug this in right here and.
Hey,
He died.
Dave.
He died.
He's dead. Yeah, that guy's dead. Dave, what do you got to plug this week, buddy?
Well, over on Live Long and Podcast, we have all kinds of great Star Trek content all the time, and in our catalog of podcasts as well. So right now we're doing Star Trek: The Next Generation. Every week is like a different episode. We're into season 2 now, so we watch it and then we talk all about it. We analyze it and break down the plot and rate it. Kind of a shorter version of this. And then we're also doing the Orville. On Monday nights, we just kind of wrapped up Star Trek Lower Decks, the whole 5 seasons of that, and talking about that. We also did a Star Trek Radio Theater at the end of December that you can go back and listen to. And Oh, and I guess when the new episodes of Strange New Worlds come out, we'll be talking about those as well. So all kinds of stuff over there. Live long, and also on our Super Mated Brothers podcast channel, a new season of Survivor is starting in about 2 weeks. So Jason will be joining us for some of those podcasts.
Hell
so look
yeah,
out for
brother.
that. And the Mary Mater Marvel Society talking about the new Captain America movie on Monday. So we're busy.
Well,
if you ever need
well,
somebody for an Orville episode, I love the Orville too.
Oh yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, we're into season 3 now. And
Okay.
we're about to do the twice in a lifetime episode. So I'm sure we can get you in there. So that's the one, the time travel episode in season 3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'd like to do the Johnny Carson thing that I always do, and Dave Mader, gotta say, please come back anytime that you'd like. You're welcome here. You're my dad on this podcast network.
I'm not old enough for that, but yes, but,
We're the same age.
He meant to say daddy.
Nope,
Oh.
I did not mean to say that. I almost said it though. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on this show tonight. Your presence here was necessary and needed. I think
Well-
you were a great guest, and I thank you for taking your time out to talk about the living daylights for 9 hours.
Thank you. Yes, and I am going to run to watch the new episode of Severance as soon as we're wrapped.
Hell
up here,
yeah!
so.
Oh, is that out tonight? It is. Steve, what do you got cooking?
Cooking. Oh my god, so much stuff. The Darth Theorist page has once again hit a milestone where we're at 30K now. It's doing great. Every day people watch. I published my first script that I wrote last week, but the second part of that happened. I'm notorious for, he's like, it's got to be less than 30 minutes, and I'm like, okay, so I wrote a script that's 40 pages long. He's like, okay, so I cut it in half, and we put it into 2 episodes, and they're both like 40 minutes each. So if you want to see my weird writing for a Star Wars fan fiction, it's all about Exar Kun, an old Sith from the old comic book eras and novel eras. I brought him back into the story. Anyway, it's a very fun page, and I'm starting to slowly realize that, like, oh, this is like something I'm passionate for. So please support it. We also do the Three-Eyed Theorist, which is a Game of Thrones channel similar to the Star Wars channel. Haven't written anything for that. I don't think I could ever, because it's too complicated. I'm like, too many houses, too many people doing things around.
That's my favorite one of like, because I'm more of a Game of Thrones guy, I guess, than a Star Wars guy.
Oh, you like?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I forgot you've told me a couple times that you
Yeah,
watched it.
Three-Eyed Theorist is great. I listen to those all the time.
I mean,
like it's so like I'm like, oh, I'm in. Like, tell me what's happening, and like you're all these characters at once, and I'm just
Yeah.
like,
It is all me. It's all me. I do, Stannis, where he's like, "Well, you made you fucking bastard," or whatever. Like, I'm doing all the voices. But yeah, that one's growing. It grew pretty quickly, but it's kind of plateaued a bit. So if you like Game of Thrones, then check that one out as well. But we started doing one that's called "What If." Event, like world events. So we're now doing sort of like a Tarantino, like alternate history, and we're doing a couple of modern history as well. We're like, what would happen if Trump actually tried to annex Canada, and like that kind of stuff.
oh,
And
no.
it's a little bit like maybe people won't like it, but at the same time, I'm having fun doing like goofy Trump voices, and just like we're turning him into a comic book villain, basically, where he'll call up like world leaders and be like, all right, here's how it's going to be. And he'll just
It has to end with them becoming the 11th province. That's just the only way.
getting all 11 infinity.
The USA is the 4th territory. Let's be real.
Yeah, the 4th territory. They don't even get provincial status. No
Yeah.
way.
And then Trump is going to get all the infinity stones, and then the world will eventually figure it out and send him to the shadow dimension or whatever. But yeah, that one's kind of fun too. I'm also doing a couple of historical channels, a couple of nature channels. All of that stuff you can find through my social media. So look it up, and there might be something really cool happening next week that I'm not gonna. I shouldn't say yet because I don't know entirely, but I might be in a cool project with some cool people that most people will know. Let's
Well,
just
I
leave
love
it
that.
there.
Well,
Let's just leave
I'm
it there.
intrigued. So,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued as well.
I'm intrigued too, and it's about me.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve. Of course, my glorious co-host, always killing it, always wrecking house. Nope, I don't know what I'm saying. Listen, I have a lot of things to talk about right now. The first and foremost thing is every single month you can find me at Super Kicked Wrestling. We have a show coming up, I think next week. It's called Throwdown. Super Kicked presents Throwdown at the Great Hall here in Toronto on I almost said October, February 28th. I'm the professional wrestling announcer for that show. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to say the names of the wrestlers louder than you've ever heard them be pronounced before. In addition to that, we have a TeePublic and a Redbubble that I don't think a lot of you really realize exists, because the only people buying t-shirts from it are my mom and Steve Waters.
I wanted
of
some
this
of them.
very show. But on that Redbubble and that TeePublic, you can get this T-shirt, the Grimoire Familiar Killers, which is a very popular program on our channel. You can get this. Yep, there he is. Also, Kill Aid exists there. We can get them. You got the Tinkerbell. Oh,
It's all right. It's okay. I was gonna do the Jason's like. Oh, there's Tinkerbell.
yeah, there we go. We're aligned now. Tinkerbell is a great shirt you can get there. Also, you can get Zardos. You can get Zardos in a shirt there. What is this? Oh,
Oh, we
here's
forgot to ask
something.
Dave. We forgot to ask Dave. Yeah. So last week, Davin was on the show,
Yes.
and collectively we came up with a James Bond henchman character, and I can't remember what it panned out to during the show, but we talked about it afterwards, and the character, his name ended up being Corporal Tunnel Syndrome.
I like it. Who drew this?
I did. I
Wow.
tried.
Nice job.
Thank you.
He's drawn all
He's like a weird mole man with shovel hands, and he's
Yeah,
in the
and,
military.
gas mask, and he's like a lizard guy underneath. Or
I
something.
guess. Yeah. I don't know. He's scary looking. He looks like a Buffy villain or something.
Yeah, yeah.
He reminds me of the Fallout 76 mole people, but a little bit more, anthropomorphic. But go on.
So, I mean, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is like, do you have an idea for a James Bond henchman? Like anything that kind of like falls off the tongue or out of your head, even?
Well, like,
Because
I
if
guess
you
my-
do, I will draw it for next week.
Well, like, I'm not that creative in the sense that I could conjure up a new character. Like, I always think of like the Austin Powers versions of that guy with the Lucky Charms, which was what I couldn't help but think of when I watched this movie with the guy when he kills him with the headphones.
Yeah.
You know,
They're
he's
always
like, yeah,
after me, Lucky
they are always trying to get me Lucky Charms. So it's so maybe some kind of an Irish villain henchman, but maybe a little different than that guy in Austin
Potato
Powers.
Man,
Potato Man.
the IRA Avenger.
Yeah, like he's coming out. We're going to have a free Ireland. I swear it's it's so maybe
I'm tired of British rule.
yeah, like if James Bond actually had to get down with the Sinn Féin and like whatever, that would be interesting to me. So,
Well, if you think of one off mic, let me know, and I'll try and draw something up before next week.
And Corporal Tunnel, of course, is not available yet. Stay tuned for that. But do you know what is available? Our newest piece of merchandise that Steve graciously drew, the Howie Mandela effect. You can get that on a T-shirt if you'd like it. If you'd like that on a shirt. And here's the thing, what I would like to just say right now is, again, Dave, thank you for joining us. It's very important that we all recognize that Hey, Did You See This One is a podcast on the United Federation of Podcasts. But what I need to let everybody know about is there's a very important question that needs to be asked each and every week. And our guest has to ask that question. So Dave, would you like to ask that question right now?
yeah. Hey, did you see this one?
Everybody, 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 everybody.
Hello, what's this button do? Oh, it says I'm connected to Gotham Radio. Hello, Gotham Radio, can you hear me?
Yes? Who is this?
This is Dr. Fraser Crane. I just found a frozen man inside of a frozen suit. And I put the suit on, and here I am. And I guess this would make me no longer a villain of Seattle, but a villain of Gotham. Hold on, there's a note here.
Okay, what is it? What does it say?
Oh, it says, Nora. It just says Nora over and over and over again.
Okay, yeah, that makes... Yeah, Victor, he was obsessed with his wife, Nora. His wife is dead. Well, I mean, I think she's dead.
You think she's dead? That means she's single. Nora! Nora! It sounds pretty good in this suit. Well, Gotham, you better watch out because you're all about to have a whole lot of scrambled eggs all over your face.
Holy shit. I don't even know what to think of that one.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. Tune in to X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Artistic interviews with graphic histories. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And movie reviews with Hold Up, a movie podcast. And while you're at it, spin a few records with Eamon on Track. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.
I'm coming, brother. Almost there.